Guns, Martinis, Gadgets, and Guns. The year was 1979, and there had been a great disturbance in cinema. Everyone wanted their piece of a sweet, sweet Star War. So, Bond went to war in space. Roger Moore returns in what Ian Fleming purists attest to as being a nearly perfect adaptation of the novel. Of course, tonight, we blast off aboard the Moonraker. Kat is here, and so is our very own Felix Leiter, Mr. Robert Meyer. Burnett, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me here, and I can't wait. I'm a Moonraker apologist through and through, so I'm ready.
I'm looking forward to it. I think this was my first Bond. I'm not sure if it was this or Goldfinger, but it would have been on TV in rotation. I think one of my first VHS, Goldfinger would have been in rotation. My first VHS Bond would have been Moonraker. And rewatching it for the first time in about 10 years, I would say I understand why young me loved it.
It has. How can you fault a pre-title sequence where they steal a Moonraker shuttle off the back of a 747, and you have a skydiving sequence like this movie has?
Oh, it's all the amazing practical effects in with the skydiving are fantastic. When was this a cinema Bond for you?
Yeah, this was my second cinema Bond. The first was Spy Who Loved Me, but I had already been a huge James Bond fan when I was a kid. I mean, I started watching when I was like 5, and they were always on the ABC Sunday Night Movie on television, and they were a big thing. Like when there was a Bond film on television, everybody watched. So when you went to school the next day, everyone was talking about the movies, which was
absolutely.
It was very much a communal. Bond was when I was in elementary school, it was a very communal thing.
Well, and it was, and especially with the Sunday night movie, being able to stay up on a Sunday night to watch it, that was huge for me.
That was always a negotiation. It was I always had to like either pre-negotiated or would play it, but like you'd look and see, oh, Thunderball's like in a 3-hour time slot and it starts at 8, which means it's going to 11. If I had to ask for 9 to 10, that was one thing because my bedtime was 9, but from 9 to 11, that was, and I learned there that I had to, like, if I pre-negotiated that, the answer probably would have been no. But I would say to my parents, like, I didn't know how long this was when we got to the 10 o'clock hour for the commercial. And I'd be like, I got to stay up for another hour. And then my parents, once I was in that state, they knew that I was not going to take no for an answer.
Well, and it kind of is a blessing when they used to break them up over 2 nights as well. Like when they did that with Superman, the movie, and you actually got to watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kat, when was the first time you saw Moonraker?
I was probably 9 years old. Maybe that was something I saw at home. We bought a box set that had a few. It was the intermix. They had a couple Connerys and a couple Moores, and then one of Dalton's films. But they were like VHSs and like a VHS pack, and so that's the first time I saw it. And 9-year-old me loved this movie a lot.
No,
well,
I mean,
would you think that it has all of the elements of every Bond movie?
Many.
It needs a DB5.
That's true.
In it.
That is very true.
But it has a great glass-drawn boat. So
it is a parody of other movies while also staying true. And this is a very sexy movie. There was a certain level of monogamy in the Spy Who Loved Me. And in this one, he is a dog in this one. He is all over the place.
It was not a mistake that they cast Corinne Clary as Drax's like henchwoman or Girl Friday. She had been previously in the Story of O, which was one of the great S&M, based on the book.
Hang on.
And it was, it's really interesting because if you go back and you watch the original trailer for this movie, it's really somber. Like it shows her being chased through the woods by dogs and everything. And
excellent scene.
Yeah, that was an incredible scene. And I think that the one thing about this movie that and I think what people respond to that don't like this movie or make fun of this movie is the wild tonal shifts in this film. I mean, this film goes the talk about a pendulum swinging from one end of the spectrum to the other. I mean, there's a lot of goofiness in this film, but there's also a lot of of serious, like that scene when she's being hunted down by dogs. I mean, you'd never seen anything like that in a Bond movie before.
It was almost Hammer horror-esque.
Mm-hmm.
And it just stops for a second. And even when Jaws is coming down the alley at Bond's contact in Rio, it's really terrifying how slowly he comes down and then removes the mask and then goes in for it. And luckily, James Bond does save her. I forget her name. I forget
that's
the character's
a
name.
great scene too. Scene and the globe trotting in this film is great.
Everywhere. Concorde. There's a Concorde in this film.
I love one of my favorite things, and there's some audacious stuff in this movie. Like they go from a helicopter landing pad at LAX, where Bond is getting picked up, cut to like some European chateau, you know, where they first there's this great Derek Meddings miniature of the Moonraker production facility,
right?
And then as they're flying, and then you just cut to Europe, and they're like, well, yep, Hugo Drax had this whole chateau brought brick by brick or whatever from Europe.
I'm like, it's like, is this supposed to be like their version of the Southern California Valley there, San Joaquin Valley, all the way down where you see what's clearly a matte painting as you see as they're coming in?
Yeah, and by the way, this movie was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Special Effects. It's got some of Derek Meddings' finest miniature work.
Yeah, I also found out that because the actual space shuttle program had not launched by the time they made this movie, that they had to kind of dream up how that was going to look, that Derek Meddings did for his miniatures. But that was really cool.
You know, I still build plastic models, and I had the plastic model of the 747 that shuttled the shuttle around.
Oh, cool.
So it was so cool to see that in the opening, and I can't tell you how many times I had played with that shuttle and imagined it launching off the top of that, you know, the 747, but to see it turn on its, even when I was watching it the first time, when it turned on its engines, I'm like, wait a minute, don't do that. You know, it was, and to be fair, that is not the most convincing model shot when the plane just kind of falls out of the sky and it blows up. Didn't matter. It was the most awesome shit I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's like it's a glider, but it still looks cool. It wouldn't be.
Yeah, it's a shuttle ignition. And one of the things about the Bond films, that they always had great. Everyone who played RAF officers or British Royal Navy, they were always great. I don't know who cast the character actors who always played those officers. They were always convincing. You know, unlike, say, the Imperial officers at the beginning of Return of the Jedi, that suddenly just, wait a minute, what happened to the British actors that you did so well casting, you know, in Star Wars and Empire? At the beginning of Jedi, you're like, except the one guy who says, the Emperor's coming here. You know, it just didn't work. Whereas they never let you down in the Bond films, that these British workaday actors were always picked. And the guys who were piloting the plane, I guess the RAF officers or whatever, they were awesome. And when you see those guys when you see Drax's men come out of the like storage compartments, it was dope. I mean, it was just, what a way to start a movie.
Well, and it just seems like even with the guys who come out of there, I thought that they were going to be like the new Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint. Like, again, upon revisiting, but the first time when watching it, it's like, okay, bad guys doing bad guy things. And then you go and it's like, okay, we got to figure out what's going on. And they go through, and everyone who is sort of like, I wonder if they're coming back. I wonder if they're going to be part of the plot. And even with Corinne, it's like, nope, done with their part of the movie, done with their part of the movie. It almost seems episodic in, like we were making fun last week with The Spy Who Loved Me, and when the Lotus goes into the water and it's like, and the movie's decided to crash into Thunderball. All right, let's go. And it does it again here. And it just, it all right, I guess we're doing a spaghetti Western with monk ninjas. All right, I guess we're just moving on.
Why not?
Why not?
But for what it's worth, I thought it did create a really intriguing mystery right off the top. It's like, why would you steal a space shuttle? You know?
I agree. I totally agree with that.
It's a great hook.
Yeah, and you're totally in. Like, and also, I mean, but they do things like, how did Jaws get on that plane and Bond not notice?
Yeah, that's something that's like, wait, what?
I mean, he's kind of a big dude. You wouldn't hear him shuffling around. Did they put him in the luggage compartment until it was time? And he emerges in that suit. It's just
Yeah. Or like, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, they shot that right over near me over by Lake Berryessa and did 88 jumps to film that. And it's like, you could tell with the close-ups that it's like, okay, you could tell they're stunt guys, but it's okay because it just looks so awesome because they actually did it for real.
Yeah. No, and again, I think Christopher Wood, who wrote the screenplay for Spy Who Loved Me, wrote the screenplay for this.
He did.
I mean, it's just Spy Who Loved Me is essentially basically a remake of You Only Live Twice, and this is a remake of Spy Who Loved Me, but I don't care. I mean,
Yeah.
it's what's funny about this film is people look at it now and it suffers the slings and arrows of critics. But at the time, when I saw this movie in the theater, I saw it the second day it was out. I saw it Saturday afternoon. I thought this was like the greatest thing ever because the Spy Who Loved Me was a return to widescreen Bond cinematography because you had the first three movies that were basically shot flatter. I don't know if it was 166. I think it was 166. And then Thunderball was widescreen. So you had Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Diamonds Are Forever, were widescreen, big widescreen films. And then Live and Let Die, Man with the Golden Gun went back to I don't know if it was 185. I think it was 166. And then Spy Who Loved Me was a return to the epic widescreen scale. And so was this. So, and of course, this had come out in the wake of because Spy Who Loved Me came out just after Star Wars. I think it came out in July of 77. And then Spy Who Loved Me came out in the wake of Star Wars. And then we had Close Encounters had come out and Superman the movie had come out and all of these things. And there was a sci-fi boom. I think Moonraker came out after Alien had opened. So everybody was primed. The idea of Bond going into space, we had spent 2 years of watching the sci-fi boom happen. You had the Japanese ripoff Message from Space that had come out and Star Crash had come out and Christopher Lee and Starship Invasions had come out. There was all this stuff. So of course Bond's going to go into space. Why wouldn't he? Like there wasn't any thought of like, oh, it's too much.
Well, and I was waiting to, upon revisit, to like just lose my suspension of disbelief. And I'm like, when is it going to get silly? It's got to get silly. I know it's going to get silly. He's going to space. And then all of a sudden you've got, Thunderball in space happening between the warring armies. And I'm giggling just like recaptured in my youth. It was fantastic.
Well, the production design is insane. The production design, the design of Drax's orbital, call it a fortress station, all of the costume design, like the mission control, the Hugo Drax control suits, the gold and the black and even the patches, how they actually made it look like, yes, these people actually, they're a real group of the only thing when I watch this movie again, I wonder is like, no one noticed that they were building a giant space launching facility in the middle of the Amazon?
Now,
how did they get that heavy equipment in there?
There's like a whole montage of that where you see the shuttles taking off from these extreme geographical locations around the world. One looks like the Himalayas, another looks like near the Grand Canyon, and it's like, wait, what? And I thought, if he's a very public industrialist, why would he need to keep a secret that he has a space station? Why don't you just say that I'm creating like an auxiliary unit for the ISS instead? Oh, how did it get up there? We never knew it was there.
Yeah. I mean, but you know what? I like that because it didn't bother me at the time.
Yeah.
I go back, it was just awesome at the time. And even that when Bond, when they're trapped underneath the shuttle before it launches, even that set, it was redolent of the Spectre base in You Only Live Twice with kind of the slanted. It was like, oh, well, there's another rocket base inside of a excavated.
Yeah, they copied that design a lot for the climax of No Time to Die. Even like the shot where Bond and Holly are in the exhaust port, they're looking up, and you see the way the blast doors are opening for the rocket to take off. I'm like, that's the exact same shot I just saw. And that whole after watching Moonraker again today, I realized that the entire climax of No Time to Die is lifted straight from the climax of Moonraker. That's exactly what it is. Both villains have a poison garden. They both got their pools there. They got the asymmetrical temple-like rooms. They've got the same plan, the blast door, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, hey, this is kind of interesting.
The only thing is, he never explains what his plan is. And what's interesting, well, all of that is actually taken from Moonraker, the novel.
Right.
You know, the unofficial Blofeld trilogy. There's so much of No Time to Die that is in the books. That Casino Royale,
You Only Live
You Only
Twice.
Live Twice, and Moonraker, and a lot of that was all part of that. Like, and you know, there was rumors when Danny Boyle was involved that the movie was called Shatterhand, and in the book, you know, Blofeld is Shatterhand, and I thought, I mean, No Time to Die really disappointed me because it wasn't fun. The movie should have been. It was only fun during the Ana de Armas scene, you know, and it was so Bond. The great thing about Roger Moore, especially in Spy Who Loved Me, and in Spy Who Loved Me, Roger Moore's a bastard. He's kind of a ruthless. He's still debonair, but he's pretty ruthless, and I like that. And in this, Bond, the goofiness was there, but I liked his portrayal of Bond.
Yeah, it didn't feel like Roger Moore was winking at the audience this time. It felt like he was like, it's been a general progression, this being the fourth outing by Roger Moore, of him actually inhabiting it, not just being celebrity Roger Moore. And here, this is so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing the subsequent films again. But this is where it's like, no, this is Roger Moore is James Bond.
I mean, the movie winked at you all the time.
Oh, for
The
sure.
movie itself was like, you know, the code to get in is the Close Encounters theme.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and it's that, and they do the there's a lot of goofiness. The gondola, you know, even though the gondola chase in Venice was cool, it's like, really?
Yeah. No. Well, there's a pigeon triple take. Come on.
Yeah, I know.
That's.
I know. And then you got the guy, the extra. I forget who that guy is. The guy he was on a beach in Spy Who Loved Me when the Lotus comes out, and he's in Venice having his wine, doing the whole guy.
Now apparently,
He was
Kat tells me that he's done it 3 times.
Yeah, he's in For Your Eyes Only too.
Is he?
Yeah,
during the ski chase.
During the ski chase.
I am looking forward. I forgot about that particular wine drinking moment.
And he is one of the Italian first assistant directors on.
Oh, is that who he is?
Yes, that's.
And he looks like an Italian.
Yes,
I love that guy.
I got a cameo in all 3 of those films. But
yeah.
Another thing in terms of like tonal goofiness is like the beginning of the scene where Jaws is in like the big clown costume. I thought that was really good when it starts. It's like really tense and kind of creepy as he's coming down the alley. And he's about to do the whole Count Dracula thing, and then these people come dancing down the hallway, and he picks her up, and he starts, he's dancing around with her, and for some reason she's not calling for help. I'm like, what? You just went from what was a really good scene. Like, what is this?
No, but see, here's the thing, and I don't mean to step on it, Rob, but the thing is that they make a very specific point of showing the rest of the crowd screaming and revelries and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think she is screaming. I just think no one cares, which was terrifying me watching it this time.
I agree. I mean, you know, the stuff in Rio is I think even the stuff in the gondolas there, what would you call it, the funicular or whatever, the cable cars.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time that I think that some of the miniature work really lets the scene down. I mean, there's a lot of I wouldn't call it substandard. I mean, I don't know how you do that, but
because there's only a few shots in that scene which they actually shot there. They had BJ Worth doing that, and he almost fell off at one point. But then you could tell, like with the close-ups of like Richard Keel, that that's clearly back rear projection on a stage and not moving around as limbo as he was before. And it's like, okay. And the fact that he's got this other henchman who's just taken over the gondola controls, and it's like, wait, where's the other employees here? Oh, we're gonna smash it down the line.
Yeah, but I didn't mind. I mean, all of the set pieces in this movie are fun. The glass factory fight, the Venice chase with the machine guys with the machine guns, and I mean, it was everything I wanted. I think did Moonraker come out in November or was it summer?
It was summer.
It was summer. So I probably had just turned 12 when I saw it. This was the perfect age to see Moonraker, because when I was 10 and saw Spy Who Loved Me, it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. And seeing Moonraker was a great progression for me as like a 12-year-old because I loved space and I loved the shuttle program and it was Spy Who Loved Me but bigger, you know.
Well, yeah. And we have discussed in other venues and locales, but it is basically, and it's a remake of You Only Live Twice, and then you have, but this is the better version of The Spy Who Loved Me, in my opinion, at this point.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's raised above just because, well, and it has something to do with Corinne.
Yeah, well,
and also Hugo Drax. Yeah. We haven't even paid the proper respect to Hugo Drax quite yet. Michael Lonsdale is phenomenal in this movie, although a lot of
people don't like him. I think he's incredible in this. His vocal stylings and the way he's always very when he says, he goes, "Take care of Mr. Bond, see that some harm comes to him." I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, it's amazing. It totally seems like somebody who's totally off the level, like you would be if you were going to engage in this type of play. Because the movie never tells you what gave him the idea to do this. He's just, he's doing it, and he's got like all of these people who kind of his specimens as he's selected them. A lot of them, for some reason, when they're on the shuttle, kind of look like they're surprised when he gives his speech as to what he's going to do. I'm like, okay, but I liked it because Drax is like it's like he's intimidating because he just sits there very stoically all the time. Yep. And he's so socially detached. He's just on another plane of existence compared to everybody else.
I agree, and there's stuff when he says, "You missed, Mr. Bond." The guy falls out of the tree. Did I? There's just and Drax is not just surprised that Bond straight up murdered his henchman that was going to kill Bond right in front of him. They're playing this game right in front of each other. There's no pretense. It's like, we can play our games if you want. And there's even cool things like the whole the centrifugal chamber, where Bond gets to first use I love the gadget. I love the wrist activated.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Dart. That thing was awesome. And I think if there's a huge weakness in this, Lois Chiles isn't very good. I think she's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a funny story. They wanted Jacqueline Smith, but she had scheduling conflicts for Charlie's Angels, and they initially had offered the role of Anya Amasova to Lois Chiles for The Spy Who Loved Me, and she's like, "Nah, I'm going to retire." And it's only because she just happened to be sitting next to Louis Gilbert on an airplane flight, and they had a great conversation, and he talked her into taking the role. And I thought, she's kind of boring, and she has a lot of these lines in the movie which are not supposed to be funny, but, oh, something went wrong with the controls. Oh, James, hanging off the edge. Hang on, James. It's like,
yeah.
It just seemed really dull, and it's,
There's a line when she talks about going to Vassar. No, Vassar or whatever. And I was like, I fucking hated that shit. I was like, come on, dude. She's
weird jump scare in the dark when she's in her hotel in Venice and she's reaching to turn on the light, and for some reason there's like a super close up and Bond grabs her hand. He's like, "Ah!" I'm like, "What'd you do that for?"
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, and again, Shirley Bassey comes back for her third time to sing the opening. And John Barry's score for this movie is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great score. I mean, the whole space march when they, it's great. And I love it when as soon as the Moonraker shuttle takes off with Bond at the end, all of those themes as it's moving in toward is fantastic. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's great. And I mean, this was really sort of the last of the epic Bonds that we ever get. It got more stripped down and turned more into more like when it first started, more of a spy thriller, 80s, 90s action movies. There's never some outlandish plot to necessarily destroy the whole planet, to exterminate all life on Earth and move to some sci-fi base.
Or under the sea.
Yeah.
You're right. They didn't do that again until No Time to Die.
No, but that wasn't even fun because once in No Time to Die, once Blofeld's dead, it's like, okay, Rami Malek, now what do you want to do?
I think in the scene where Bond's talking to Safin and he cuts to the chase after hearing everything Safin has to say, and he's like, all you're really doing here is standing at the end of a long line of sad, angry little men, which I interpreted to mean that it's like revenge against the world. He's bitter about his own losses, and he's just not going to stop.
But he never flat out says what he's going to do. Like, there's one line where the scientist says to Nomi, we can kill everyone who looks like you. And
Yeah.
I took that to mean like, okay, you've got a genetic DNA weapon and you're going to take out, but I felt like they didn't want to totally go there and actually say that we're going to exterminate a large group of people that we deem to be unworthy, because that would have been like, people would have been like, well, that's awful. That would suddenly take it down some weird racial, some eugenics, extermination, Nazi thing. And I felt like they were going there, but they cut that back, I think, in editorial or something. But that could just be me reading into it.
Because it's funny because he says to her when she's dragging him along over the over the poison pool or whatever, she's like, he says, "Oh, I got a vial it'll help out the the West African diaspora. It'll be a good thing." And I'm thinking, okay, what is he? If this is an extermination, does he mean like a good thing because that's where AIDS and Ebola came from, and he thinks that in his twisted mind, he thinks that killing everybody is gonna make it better. I mean, he admittedly is a crazy cartoon character in the movie, who's a bit too cartoonish for my taste. But I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was the funnest movie in the Craig era because like the Cuba stuff, the action, the classic villain, evil, big giant Ken Adam type layers. I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
I loved it.
I can't. See, to me, Casino Royale's still my favorite.
Oh yeah, still easily.
I think the Daniel Craig Bond era is the most disappointing era of all of Bond history, because it's too dour, and it's in the first movie, Bond likes being Bond, and then Quantum of Solace, he's angry Bond. And then because the writers strike, it's a little weird. I mean, I like Dominic Green, even though he's like, well, we're going to control the water. There's a lot. They decided to cut it. If they had edited the film differently, Quantum of Solace, I think, would be better than because the scene at the Opera House is great. I love that scene. And there's the action in it it's hard to watch because it's incoherent. They wanted it cut like Paul Greengrass's Bourne movies.
Yeah.
And what they don't understand is you have to shoot a movie. Like if you watch, what is it? Is it the Bourne Ultimatum, the third Bourne film?
Yeah.
If you look at that film, after I saw that movie, I thought they've created a new form of action because they had shot enough coverage that every time there's a cut, as fast as it is, they have a new piece of coverage that's conveying new information. Whereas in Quantum of Solace, those shots should have played out longer because you don't even like the plane chase, which is really cool, is borderline incoherent. You can't even enjoy, like, if you're showing a plane flying, right? If you want to see a plane go before you cut, this movie in Quantum, it was always like cut. So you never got to even enjoy the master shots that Bond films are usually so good about. Like Moonraker has those great shots with the glass-drawn boat going down, I guess it's the Amazon, where you're watching the charges go up, and it's an aerial shot, and you're like, that's a real boat, in the real Amazon with charges going off in the water. I mean, that's real action, and we know that it's real. And what's happened with modern action cinema is you don't have master shots anymore. There's lots of close-ups, like the action scenes that we're getting, like the fight scenes in the Batman movies, because like in Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, Christian Bale can't move fast in the Batman suit. So you don't have punches that go 1, 2, 3. It's always you're cutting on the punch. Mm-hmm. And the cut is creating a false sense of action. Whereas you watch movies like The Raid, for instance, or even Shang-Chi, when you're watching fight scenes, you're having multiple moves in one camera shot, and that can't be faked because you're looking at choreography. And if you look at directors like Paul Verhoeven, for instance, in RoboCop, there's a scene in RoboCop where RoboCop attacks a cocaine factory. And there's shots where you're in this factory and there's scaffolding and multiple levels and people all around. And you get these master shots where RoboCop is walking forward and he's shooting. Yeah. And it's really, really well choreographed. Go watch the truck chase from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where there's these long takes where the action plays out. And it's really hard to do that now with our, especially in our superhero cinema. But these movies still have long takes. The Bond films still have these, and Moonraker has a lot of that, especially in the big wide shots and the actual action with cars and boats and things like that. You know that they're doing it for real, and it creates. I mean, you saw that in No Time to Die. When the DB5 is spinning around in that circle, even though there's still a lot of editing, there's still a lot of practical work in those sequences, and they were in Matera, and it looks great.
Oh yeah, they had to they put up this type of set dressing around the square to protect it, so that way they could actually fire all their dummy pellets as he did the donuts, so they could do it without having to cheat it.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. That they had to pour like how many thousands upon thousands of gallons of Coca-Cola on the cobblestones, so that way when the motorcycle did that jump, and they did it for real, and you could see it because the camera stays with the shot, and it's like.
Well, and they built a ramp. It goes up, and then they like CG'd the stairs. They had a straight ramp that it could go up, but then they could. I thought that's the kind of brilliant thing that CG is really great at, when you can enhance. You can actually do a practical effect, but then by fixing the background with CG, it's even more convincing.
Well, I forget the euphemism, but it's like practical effects are the entree, and CG is the garnish. Essentially, it's supposed to accentuate what you're making.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things I appreciate about this franchise, is that they keep trying to do it for real, but trying to top themselves. Like in Spy Who Loved Me, they did that stunning jump off the cliff on the skis with the parachute. And it's like, how do we top that? Oh, throw Bond out a parachute.
Yeah,
let's not use a parachute.
Yeah, no, and that what a great. I mean, I wish. Part of the reason I think I went to England to see Skyfall, that I had to see it in London, was I wanted to know what it was like. I've always wondered, what was it like to be in London, in the UK, watching the opening scene of Spy Who Loved Me for the first time, and seeing the Union Jack come out of that parachute. And then the Bond theme kicks in, the hands come up, and you hear the strains of Nobody Does It Better. I mean, I know that British people have a reputation of being reserved, but man, I bet there wasn't a quiet audience member in the house when that happened.
I would like to think that the audience went wild, but I'm assuming that there was a polite golf clap.
I think they went crazy. I've read a few accounts of that.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, I just can't imagine what it would have been like to see that. I mean, I thought it was badass the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
Kind of like watching South Park, and they start singing "Blame Canada for Us." It's fantastic.
Well, for me, the first big real Bond stunt that I ever saw, for the first one, was in GoldenEye, when he jumps off the dam, because that was the first Bond movie I had seen. And I watched this guy do this, and I'm like, oh my God, that thing is so, the cat, and the fact that you can actually go there and do that for if you want. I'm like, if only I would love to go there and do that someday.
No, I mean, yeah, but it's funny. The thing is, there is like the triple take with the bird, and then the Close Encounters thing, and then obviously the glass factory, all of that candy glass. It's a little over the top.
I liked Bond in a China shop. It was fun.
Yeah, I mean that's funny in itself. Bond in a China shop, and it's good stuff. But you look at it, and it's still about a man who's going to exterminate all human life on the planet Earth.
And
I don't know if Orchidea Negro, the black orchid that he's using, does that spare animals?
Yes,
that's what he claims.
Yeah, I mean, does it though? Does it?
Yeah, I couldn't figure out. They didn't really explain the science behind it.
Yeah, I guess they. I guess. And if that's an aerosol, I mean, apparently it is, because it's going into the atmosphere. That's one powerful. Those are very powerful. I mean, as much as Bond says, how powerful this. We have one vial of this, and it's really powerful.
Well, and how long? Okay, first of all, do you have to clean up after the carnage, or are you living on the space station until everybody decomposes? What's the score here?
Yeah.
Hugo, I have some questions, please.
The whole Earth is going to smell really bad for a long time.
Exactly.
Or at least all the places you'd want to, go to. Like,
I guess you could.
Well, he did mention when Drax is giving his big speech that it won't be so much them going back to the planet; it will be their children going back, and that they will always look up to the stars and know that I am the supreme being and responsible. But admittedly, one of the other things that seemed a little odd is that he launches some of those globes pretty early before the big fighting starts. And I'm like, are they going to be able to catch up with that? Because it looks like it's already skimming the atmosphere when it's.
Oh yeah.
But that was great though, and I thought it was really like intimidating. Like he gets under your skin a lot when he's just callously doing this, and it's like, man, that's just. Again, coupled with like the goofiness of having M and the defense secretary walk into the lab or what they think is a lab wearing gas masks, and he's just, and they completely ridiculously got rid of all the lab and decked it out to look all Renaissance and all that. And he's just sitting there playing his piano. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's
and lest I forget his henchman Chang. He was awesome.
Oh no, he was.
Yeah.
You know, bringing Odd Job back, but it's Chang. You know, it's
yeah,
Odd Job was Korean.
Yeah, he was like Michael G. Wilson's karate teacher. So he's like, hey, why don't you come and play this role in the Bond movies? It's like, okay. That was fun.
No, it was. Look, I don't understand why Moonraker gets so made fun of nowadays.
Well,
I mean, it's because why they go into space.
Maybe it's because it's just so obvious that they were not, like, rather than building on the things that worked really well in The Spy Who Loved Me, it's like they panicked. Oh, Star Wars is out. We got to do Star Wars. Because to this day, at the end of the credits for Spy Who Loved Me, it still says Bond will return and for your eyes only. They never changed it. And it's clearly them trying to follow that trend, but it paid off. It made $210 million in 1979 when it came out, and it cost twice the budget of Spy Who Loved Me. But they shot it in France because I guess and that's why they ended up casting Michael Lonsdale for Drax, because they wanted James Mason. And they're like, oh, sorry, because of this, whatever the agreement was, I guess you had to cast like X amount of French actors. And Ken Adam estimates that there were like 222,000 work hours for building those sets, but it pays off. It looks amazing.
Oh, and that movie is wildly entertaining.
Yeah.
Like when you're watching it, so what if it's a cartoon? You know, it's a really good cartoon. And, I remember now that it was actually Edgar Wright who made the analogy recently when he was promoting Last Night in Soho. He says, all the Bond actors, it's like Sean Connery was dark chocolate. Then you have George Lazenby kind of followed that a bit, but Roger Moore's milk chocolate. Then they went to Dalton, who's more dark chocolate. Then the Brosnan's milk chocolate. Craig's dark chocolate. So he's like, we need a milk chocolate Bond next. You know, back to the fun, whimsy, if you will. Because I felt that, while you're right, that the Craig era is very dour. I mean, I give him a pass for that in Casino Royale because that's just, the last novel. But at least in Casino Royale, he's having fun.
Yeah.
And, they do go to Montenegro and
exactly. He's having a lot of fun and it's great. And admittedly, I thought No Time to Die was really fun for me as well. But I get that that's as close as they came to high fantasy in the Craig era. And even then it feels a bit restrained. Whereas I do agree. I want them to go back to like whimsy and fantasy for the next era.
Like, I don't know how. The problem is, in this day and age, all of the villainous people, the real villains on the earth right now, the people that'll like blow up the Twin Towers, or whether it's Al Qaeda, or whether it's the West is in a war with fundamentalism from the 14th century, the real villains on the planet Earth now, they're no fun. It's like, how do you make a Bond movie? Who are you going to go after? I mean, even people like Drax, whether it's Elon Musk or whether it's Jeff Bezos, they're like, Jeff Bezos is now dating Lauren Sanchez, a former newscaster from LA, and Elon Musk dates actresses. It's like the captains of industry, the people that actually build the Moonraker station, they just want to bone a bunch of actresses and hot chicks, and it's like, where are the people that really want to reshape the world? And I think what would really be interesting is if I made a Bond film, if someone came to me and said, Rob, okay, what would you do now? I think we now have to have some kind of a semi-apocalyptic event where Bond, it begins with, instead of a crime, a horrible, the unthinkable happens. A nuke takes out a city. Because in this day and age, I don't know if you can go whimsical Bond. I think you have to go fatalistic, apocalyptic Bond, where something really awful happens at first. So it's not on a small scale. It's like terrorists take out 5 cities, and they're going to take out more. And I know that seems like maybe it's too harsh, but in my mind, you can't go back to whimsical Bond. You can't go back to Craig did, and I think one of the big problems of the Craig era is the villains were not. I mean, Silva is the Joker. You need to have a villain. You need to have a villain that is truly somebody who is so dangerous, and they've already shown they'll kill tens of thousands, if not millions of people. And that it's Bond once again trying to save, because Hugo Drax and Karl Stromberg were going to destroy the world. They had no problems with doing that. They're going to start a nuclear holocaust. Well, what if you were halfway there? What if our villain triggers 5 nukes in 5 cities and destroys world capitals? You know, so what if we lose second tier cities and they're threatening to take out 5 more? So we've already lost. So the stakes are the highest they've ever been in a Bond film.
Well, you could do that with like an Ozymandias sort of villain, where the first time Bond meets up with him, it's like, oh, you think I would tell you my entire plan? I did it 5 minutes ago. Not to rip it completely, but do that and then have him be charming. And it's like Bond has the upper hand. I think you can still do whimsical with that apocalyptic storyline.
Yeah,
You jar the audience with it first, and then now you hate him, and Bond can go through all the Bond motions while he's...
You have to up the stakes. I really think, I mean, this might seem so mean-spirited. I'm like, yeah, you got to nuke a city. Like, if I was going to do...
Kind of like the tease at the beginning of Mission Impossible Fallout, where they trick you into thinking that all of these major cities have been, annihilated.
Yeah, and yes. But in this case... like even in the Jack Ryan film, The Sum of All Fears, they bomb, a nuke gets set off at the Super Bowl. It wasn't a book, and it was just a football game in Boston. But I think that's how a Bond movie needs to open, something where the stakes are so high, and they don't do it. They do it for real, or some chemical weapons thing. Because the problem now is, we live in a world where there are like they said in like Alfred said in Dark Knight, some men just want to watch the world burn. We now live in a world where we have bad actors who have proven that if given an opportunity, they would take out a Western city with a nuclear weapon. If they have a nuclear weapon to use, they would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And once you live in that world, and the problem is, and these guys they'll live in the caves of Tora Bora as the nuclear fallout rains around whatever and kills however many people it kills and however many people die, and they won't have a problem with that because they're fighting for a higher power, whether it's Allah or whatever their religious beliefs are. And when you're dealing with those kinds of people, they're not fun.
No.
Yeah, they're not fun.
Well,
and
but if they go, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No. Ultimately, you said ultimately. That is an ace.
Well, it's no fun because at the end of the day, when you're dealing with people like that, all you can do is kill them. And when they're dead, it doesn't seem like it's enough justice. If someone nukes a city and then Bond shows up and kills that person and shoots him in the head, that doesn't feel like anything is really accomplished. It's not like pushing Drax out the airlock. That's more satisfying because he doesn't get to kill many people, But if you have a villain that does something truly dastardly and has taken out a city, even if Bond wins at the end, what does he win? Where are we at? I mean, it's really interesting. The news here today in California, in both San Francisco and Los Angeles, there are now gangs of people that are going into high-end high-end retail stores like Louis Vuitton or Nordstrom, which is a big store chain here from Seattle, by the way. And there's like 80 people going in on coordinated thieving rampages to these big stores. And to me, I'm looking at that going, okay, well, how far away are we from the time when 80 people can target an individual? And 80 people show up at someone's house specifically to either take them out, rampage through their private property. I mean, we're seeing the beginnings of the Visigoths coming over the hills in Rome, destroying our civilization. And when that's happening, when you have citizenry becoming just regular citizens en masse becoming the villains, what kind of a world do we live in? How does Bond combat something like that? And I don't know the answer. So,
Well, it's difficult for a secret agent to set an example.
yeah.
So, because he's secret, and it is basically just a revenge assassin game when it comes to Bond, and it is playful, but also it's escapism. Like the Bond films themselves, at a certain point, I do understand everything in terms of when I open my window, I do feel like no, this is fine meme with the house on fire. And it's like, yeah, that's a bit much. And when I go to, maybe that's part of the reason why I enjoyed the space battle and why I didn't get angry at the pigeon triple take is because I just wanted to sit in a movie and watch something awesome, watch some very good looking people, a charming man who is far too young or far too old for Lois Childs, and just enjoy.
Is he though?
No, not really. Lois Childs was older than she looked. Is it just me, or was she giving off sort of a GoBot Kathleen Turner look?
Yeah,
Again.
pre body heat.
But just as a balance, anyway. She's also on Death on the Nile, I think. Anyway, yeah, I agree. I agree that it would have to be higher stakes, but it could also just go back to a Goldfinger destabilization, where it is a collapse of a country's economy or internet.
Yeah,
who knows what kind of chaos would that do?
But I think that one of the
I'm trying to find a silver lining.
Yeah, I just think one of the problems with the Bond franchise is look, to me, when Mission Impossible Fallout does what Fallout does, it's like it's out bonding Bond. You know, Ethan Hunt and the IMF team is those films, Rogue Nation and Fallout and even Ghost Protocol, sort of were more satisfying movies than half of the Craig era.
Yeah, and the thing that sort of with No Time to Die that's been on my mind is that I sort of wanted to see a James Bond movie where James Bond died, and at the end, after the credits, it said James Bond will return, and it was more of a meta moment than anything else because I wanted it to blow everyone else's mind. I was like, this isn't a documentary. Which James Bond movie did you see? Which one's your favorite? Oh, the one where he dies. Okay, well, now we've had that, and that premise is sort of out of the way. We've had the former agent. Maybe we have a former M come back. Maybe Ralph Fiennes goes away for a while, and then comes back. But they kind of did that in No Time to Die.
See the scripting, it's like, where's the submersible that you came into that base in with? Get back in that, turn it around, back it up, and get the hell out of there.
But he'd never be able to touch his girlfriend and daughter.
So what?
Well, it would be heartbreaking. So I understand his motivation.
So that's how you end the film, where you see the two of them, and never will they ever touch again. They can't get anywhere near one another.
Oh, they had all the time in the world.
And then, yeah, that was another thing I couldn't stand about that movie. Like the Craig era is a Bond era unto itself. You saw Bond, you saw the freshly minted Bond. You saw the end of his career with No Time to Die, and presumably what we never got was a regular mission. He was never given a mission to go on. We're watching we never saw what was going on with the other Bonds, so now we're giving the life cycle. Basically, here's 30 years in the life of James Bond that we're going to give you in these 5 movies. It's the beginning of his career as a 00 agent. It's the end of his life. And you're watching all of this, but we never got one fun, escapist Bond film with Daniel Craig playing that role. And I felt like I was robbed of that, because what they were doing, like they've always been doing, Bond has been behind the curve since
Live and Let Die?
Secret Service. No, because Live and Let Die was emulating blaxploitation movies.
I thought you meant behind the curve as in trying to catch up kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, they've been trying to catch up since the early 70s. And I feel like what Bond needs to do is the Bond franchise needs to once again become a trailblazing franchise and ask yourself, okay, where we already know it was in 1995 where M calls Bond a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War, you know, in GoldenEye. And it's like now we're 26 years later, and he's still a relic of the Cold War. You know, Bond is, how do you update Bond? I mean, you know what I think right now, what I think is the funniest thing? If Bond is the unrepentant, womanizing, hard drinking, he's the antithesis of where our culture has gone to. I mean, make him the anti-woke agent, where he unrepentantly sleeps, have him sleep with 20 women, and go back to the era where in Goldfinger he sees somebody reflected in a woman's eyes and he throws her under the blow of that. I mean, if the idea that Bond had to become, he's got to go in the opposite direction, because without James Bond, all of you people can bitch and moan and complain about civil rights and your woke ideology and whatever. The world's going to be destroyed while you sit there and talk about pronouns. What we need is a man that is outside of all of that. That's like, shut your face and I will shoot you if you don't shut the fuck up right now, because you are getting in the way of me saving the world. And right now we live in a society we're never going to produce a James Bond ever again.
You're making me feel like Padme, Anakin. I feel like I don't even know you.
Well, I'm just saying that you've got to go. We live in an era where they, it was like in Living Daylights. Well, it's the age of AIDS, and we need to make Bond a more chaste character. So we're going to give him Olivia Jabo, and he's not going to be sleeping around because that would be bad. Which I can understand their reasoning for it, but we're watching the destruction of Western civilization before our eyes right now. Mm-hmm. We're watching everything that ever happened, the Renaissance, the dark, getting out of the Dark Ages, all of that is being dismantled by certain facets of our society that want to we've got a fascist thought process that wants to dismantle the progress of the Western world for the last 600 years, that we're now living in that world. I mean, maybe that's your villain. Maybe your villain is, and then of course, if you portray somebody like that as being bad, like the ultimate far leftist.
Well, like Cocteau from Demolition Man, something like that. Someone who's creating their own utopia. And sorry, I hate to bring it back to Moonraker, but you know how basically the entire movie takes place in the fortress. We get to the villain's lair right off the kick, and we never really leave. He's always as you said, Bond shoots a guy, and Drax is like, meh. And it's because there are no repercussions, it is Drax's land. If he doesn't want it, he doesn't own it. And so with that, if you wanted to create a woke utopia, then that's how you would do it. Everyone's, on keto, and there's no alcohol and there's no smoking. Certainly not. Anyway, I agree.
All human vices have been eliminated or something like that. I mean, that could be just goofy enough that it would kind of work. But then you go back to when it's in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where Bond visits all of those ladies, in the fortress. Mm-hmm. And all of these women, whether it's, maybe it's a cross between a far left and a far right world. So it's The Handmaid's Tale meets the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh or something. Which, I don't know. I mean, something like that. I don't know what you would do. But I just wonder can you make a Bond movie now and make a whimsical Bond in this day and age? Could you ever do I mean, I don't know if you could do it.
I feel, channeling everything that you just said, a great Bond villain for today's day and age would be like a cult leader.
Yeah.
Because that's basically all the things you're talking about. I see what you're talking about, and that would definitely channel that energy, or that tonally, and it would be just absurdist, goofy enough to work, probably.
Well, especially if you make the villain, you make the villain sort of somebody that you find out it's revealed that he wants to destroy Western civilization. That's and make him somebody that's going to start targeting museums. Maybe somebody destroys the Louvre. The opening of the movie is the destruction of the Louvre, and Bond, who you find out he is a fan of art. And you see the devastation. Maybe I'm going the wrong direction. Instead of being apocalyptic, what about the destruction of human history? Of our history, of British history.
Well, I think that's something else that Drax is trying to do too. He mentions to Bond when he first meets him, he's like, "Oh, Mr. Bond, your people's only contribution to Western civilization, afternoon tea." And that kind of does tell you a lot about him. He's very dismissive. It's like Scott says, if I don't own it, then I obviously don't want it. But, and the way he's just, of all the things looking that he could think of coming from Britain, it's tea's the only thing. You imagine a villain like that who would cherry pick what from this culture that I like, and the rest of it I'll just kind of, wipe it out.
Yeah, but
like Oprah said, oh yeah, this will be great for the West African diaspora. You can have some of this, and these people have some of that, and you see on the map how it's going to be spreading around. It's like, okay, I see how you're getting this out there.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, or you know, I mean, you now have. I was watching on my Twitter feed today. I threw out this thing about how these kids in North Korea smuggled in Squid Game and like they're going to be executed, and maybe it's and now we've got so many people that are going, oh, let's try communism again. Yeah, that worked, but everyone thinks you guys just didn't do it right. Like, what if you had some? I don't know, but then again, making the Chinese the villains, that's never going to happen in this day and age either, because of the financing of films and where you want them to open. I mean, No Time to Die opened in China. You're not going to want to piss them off, so you can't do I mean, you could do cults, but you couldn't do some,
I feel that there might be a reckoning coming regarding that, because given that China's habit lately of, you can't air this movie here because one of your actors said something years ago on Twitter. It's like, well, how can a big shot Hollywood producer greenlight a big movie with China in mind, seeing as they're never going to fully know everything that the people working on their movie has ever said, and who knows when something's going to boil to the surface and piss them off, and we just lost the China market. So it's like, I feel like they have to kind of stop thinking about that, and because if you're going to have countries. Like you heard that, Eternals was banned in several countries because they refused to let some of the more archaic areas of the world perform these edits. And they're like, no, you're not going to do it. And it's like, okay, then we won't show your movie. And I feel that if that's the way the world is or the way that it's going, then they can't really, they're going to have to figure out how we can get around the China market and deal with it at the same time. Because it is like initially that what they were upset about with Shang-Chi was so much of the Western part of the film because they hadn't seen it yet, but it was the comments that Simu Liu made some years ago. And they were going to ban it on that alone. And then they saw the movie and they didn't like the idea that he was a, Americanized hero. And it's like, okay, that kind of makes more sense given China is what it is. But still, like, I don't see how studios can go forward factoring that in as something that they need to depend on.
No, I mean, look, we live in a very strange world where on many different levels. And it's I used to think that everybody agreed that Western civilization was a pretty good thing. The Enlightenment, the Renaissance, that all of these things were inherently pretty good. And it's funny because I keep waiting for somebody to show me an example of okay, you want to change things? Show us an example of what you'd like to change them into, and then you hear people going, the old chestnuts. Well, what we need is more collectivism. And it's like, have you paid any attention? You apparently didn't go to history class. Have you worked or looked into I mean, look, I almost like the Cold War bond. It was great because you had the ideology that we were fighting against. It was very the communists versus the free West. And that was very easy to understand. And now we don't have that anymore because our whole planet has become fractured as to what it is that we all expect or we all want, or what is it that where are we going? What are we going to do? And the problem is Bond is a state actor. And if you're going to say, well, Britain's just a waning colonial power, and then what good are they? How does Bond and MI6 maintain a certain level of, how do you root for Bond in our world that is disintegrating? All of the things that were put in place when Bond was created post World War II, he's a hero. Is Bond a hero anymore? Is working for MI6 something that can be lauded?
But all right, well, here's what I got in terms of first things first, the Craig era being an era unto itself. Here's how I've reconciled that. I like to put Casino Royale at the beginning, and you can pepper in whatever Bond movie you want whenever you want until you get to No Time to Die. I still think it's one guy. And I still think that it just shows different adventures. Also, not a documentary. Second, I think that we do. I think that James Bond as a state actor, if there is, like, as you say, the world is burning. Part of the reason that it's burning, and I'm sure that you saw Drinker's recent video in terms of destroying the past heroes and cutting them down a peg.
All three of those videos are great.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I think that part of the reason why we do have this feeling of sort of, I don't want to say helplessness, but nothing to aspire to, is because all the things that people your age, people my age, people Kat's age, those were all aspirations that have been knocked down. And now we just need we need Henry Cavill to come in and make it all better and hold us tight and tell us that we're doing this because it's good. You know, these are not things that we're doing that because they're easy. We're doing them because they're hard. To quote a man.
Let's make, look, that's what Star Trek was. And it's funny because I think Star Trek is I look at Star Trek, and that is the ultimate. Star Trek Discovery is the ultimate fate of all of these franchises and all of these heroes that were born out of the 20th century. Whatever you're going to watch, whatever movies, whether you're watching war films or whatever, I think can you imagine like what the world will be like in 50 years when China's cashed in all their chips around the world and they own all the mineral rights in Africa and they've built half the infrastructure in Europe, and we're all standing around going, well, when did this happen? How China literally runs the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have our Firefly future where all of us speak Chinese and other languages. And
we're going to get spaceships.
Hopefully.
Okay. Then I'm fine. Yeah, I, for one, welcome our new overlord.
Yeah, hey, as long as they let me keep my movies. Well, it's really interesting that one of the most fascinating science fiction novel series is the Three Body Problem that they're now making. The same Chinese author who wrote The Wandering Earth, which is a huge hit in China. The Three Body Problem is now being made in. There's two different versions of the series. One's being made in China, and now Weiss and Benioff are doing it here. That's a really fascinating science fiction series, and it comes right out of China. And of course, they're a totalitarian regime where the government acts like the mafia, but eventually that'll change. And how are we going to change and evolve as how? I mean, we're in the next. I wish I was going to live for another 200, 300, 400 years, because at least it's going to be very interesting to see where we go as a people, and what's going to happen.
Morlocks.
Well, it's kind of reminds me of how all the modern day guys working at NASA would try and go back to all the retired guys and bring them back there to say, hey, how did you build these things? Because it's like we're forgetting how to do these things, which is amazing, because you think of NASA, which, by the way, is another funny line in Moonraker where Lois Child says, oh, NASA, that's the space agency. but it's like, the fact, I think of guys at NASA got to be like some of the smartest people on the planet, but even they have to go back. It's like, hey, we don't know how to do this stuff anymore. And you look through those old reference books and see just how insanely more complicated it was, how much more intelligent everything was. And to think that even at the highest echelons of intelligence society, like we could think of for NASA, that even they're forgetting how to do, achieve the wonders that they once achieved. It's pretty kind of scary.
No, and now, we don't even have, where are the young people that are going to go into STEM? Where are the rocket scientists of today? And I know that there are some, but I mean, what is American youth going to do in 20 or 30 years? Where are we going to be?
We're going to be facing the sea level rise crisis.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to be, and all of those things, and it'll be great because it'll wean out a good half of our population, and the people that can't man up. Sorry, or if whatever your pronoun is, if you're going to zer up or whatever.
Man up is colloquial. You're fine.
Yeah, it's just it's going to be really interesting. That's why I would like to just stick around and watch and see what's going to happen. I mean, if there really were vampires in the world at this point in my life, I'd say, okay, please lend me or add me to your number and let me join your vampire group, because I'd like to be immortal enough to just watch what happens. And I've seen enough daylight. I'm good. What do you need me to do? let me join your ranks. But I mean, the thing about Moonraker is I still think that there's something relatively appealing about a megalomaniac who finds the most beautiful people he can to repopulate the earth with beautiful people. and you know, it's not like there's people of color in his new world order.
Oh yeah.
It's not like even back then in 77 and 79, it wasn't like, you know, we had other people around the world represented. There was representation there. You know, it wasn't like some Aryan race. So it's interesting that you had, like, today somebody would say probably, well, I don't know if we should do a Bond movie where the villain's going to kill everyone on Earth except these like 60 people. Is that tough? Like,
but I don't think that that's so far outside the realm of possibility, because I'm still baffled that they did have I'm sorry, spoilers for No Time to Die. I'm still baffled that they had a James Bond movie where James Bond died. And if they're willing to do that, I'm pretty sure that they'll kill the rest of the planet. It doesn't seem outside of the realm. And especially, as you're saying, if it's apocalyptic and if you have to, you know, let's blow up the moon. Would you miss it? Would you?
Well, Roland Emmerich's doing that.
But,
Oh, no.
yeah,
Come on, I can't wait to see that movie.
Well, where's Snake Plissken going to go when he escapes from Earth?
Yeah, I don't know.
Now, I would be remiss if I did not ask you about the mythical Moonraker commentary you teased once upon a time.
Oh my God. I have it. I cut it together. I should just put it up.
You should. You used to tease everybody about that on Observations for the first like 50 episodes or so. You're talking about that a lot. And we're like, post it.
I got so hammered. I mean, it's not very insightful. I just am standing. I was watching it, and I was getting so hammered. I think it was already hammered before I was watching. I threw it on, and like, I'm gonna do a commentary, and it would go up, and actually, I think I actually have it. I cut it together. It's somewhere on this computer. But it's pretty. Actually, I'll look and see. Since we're on right now, let's see. Moonraker commentary.
I wasn't going to ask. I heard that it could get a man fired.
Oh, it's yeah, probably. It's somewhere. I mean, it's you never know. I'd have to like go through it and look at it.
Oh no.
And a lot of it is me just going, "This is awesome."
That's the best type of commentary.
Exactly.
It's like I listen to technical commentaries and I like the information, but I also like the ones like the funniest line I've ever heard in any commentary. It was on for David Fincher's Zodiac, and it was one with James Ellroy, Brad Fisher, and James Vanderbilt as the producers. And there was a lull in the commentary for a bit. Nobody was saying anything, and they got to the scene where Graysmith goes out on his first date, and he goes out to use the payphone, and his girlfriend comes out there, and she's wearing a parka and everything and looking at him like he's totally done. And James Ellroy suddenly breaks the silence, and he says, "She gives good parka." And it was so funny because you can tell from the way he said it when he's talking. I was like, "Oh, that was great."
Yeah,
like, can we have more irreverent commentaries like this?
No, have you know, some of my favorite commentaries, like Kurt Russell and John Carpenter together, like on Escape from New York. And then John Milius's commentary on Conan with Schwarzenegger. And Schwarzenegger, "Oh, look at Sven." Milius is like, "Yeah, okay, great." I mean, there's some good. I mean, it was really, you know, making commentaries. When I was recording the commentary for Star Trek V, Shatner talked a lot about that. The inspiration for Sybok was Timothy Leary, and how he thought back to Timothy Leary's experiments with LSD and stuff in the 60s and mind expansion, and all that was in the commentary. And you have to submit commentaries to the studios, and I got back, you have to cut all this out of the commentary. And I'm just like, Star Trek isn't about drug use. And I actually went back to the legal department. I said, well, here's 10 different episodes that deal with drug addiction in Star Trek, beginning in the first season with Mudd's Women. The first season of Next Generation literally has an episode called Symbiosis, where an entire planet has hooked another planet on drugs, essentially. And it's like, how do you? It's so frustrating dealing with that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, especially if you had character motivation coming from Shatner himself. Mr. Shatner. I'm sorry. I'm not privy to just.
He would say, don't call it. He would say, don't call me Mr. Shatner. Call me Bill.
All right.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's in the script. If you read the script, dude, it's in the script. Come on.
It's in the first movie.
Yes, it is. In the first movie.
Speaking of commentaries, it was confirmed that Kerry Fukunaga recorded a commentary for No Time to Die, but it's not going to be on the Blu-ray. Or
really?
on the. Yeah, MI6HQ reported it. They're pretty reliable. And I guess he was giving an interview somewhere in the press junket, and it came out that he had recorded one. And I'm like, I looked at the official, special features rundown, which is admittedly pretty slim because we're in the, the EPK era. And it's not listed, so I hope it gets uploaded as like a podcast or something.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's a bummer. I mean, it's funny because they're pretty, Criterion had those the commentaries on From Russia with Love and Goldfinger when they were first released on Laserdisc, and they were suppressed after they came out, and they pulled the commentaries. You can still find them online and stuff, but
right, because all of Criterion's extras are exclusive to them, and it's like once they lose the lease, they can't reissue it. And
well, there's things that were said that were not appreciated, apparently.
Yeah, I heard that. I guess the guy who edited this Bond book called Nobody Does It Better, which is like a history of Bond, he was told that he'd get notes from the studio of things he wasn't allowed to say, and he was talking about that. And I'm like, maybe I don't want to. I do. We'll be getting the Tashin's book, the James Bond Archives No Time to Die edition. It's like 684 pages, 1,100 photos. So that'll be quite an interesting deep dive.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, hi, everybody. Steve is here.
Aloha.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. How is everybody?
Great.
Good.
Very, very well.
I literally just got home from work and wanted to hop on and say hi to Rob and Catherine and to you, Scotty.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I haven't seen you in a dog's age, sir.
It's been a while.
We did get a chance to talk about Moonraker. When was the first time you saw Moonraker?
Oh, I probably in my early teens, maybe 12 or 13 years old.
And was it the best thing ever or second best thing ever?
Second best thing ever, for sure.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. I've seen kind of seen Quantum of Solace.
Right. It's Moonraker wasn't one like I went back to very often. But I did hear, somebody in the chat the other day was saying that they recently, within the last week or two, checked it out again for, in over like 10 years and was a lot better than they remember. So that was cool.
Absolutely true. Same experience for me.
Yeah, same for me even.
Really?
It aged like fine wine.
Some of them do.
And I was really, really impressed. I was dreading it. I thought it was going to be silly, and I thought I was going to end up being like, I thought it was going to be a chore, and it ended up being the highlight of my day yesterday. I've been listening to nothing but Shirley Bassey, not only the openings song, but the disco single version, which definitely is fantastic. Rewatching the incredible stunts, seeing the seam where the stunt double for Roger Moore has the parachute, the whole thing. It doesn't hold up in HD, and it makes me happier. But I'm surprised, Rob, when you said that it was a miniature. I don't know why that took me a second to realize, because I was looking at it and I was like, is that a miniature or is that like an actual NASA like installation and everything? And
look, Derek Meddings, man, all the way back to Thunderbirds. And all the Jerry Anderson stuff. I mean, if you look at a lot of his miniature work, you know what's amazing? There's a couple of shots in Moonraker when they actually used, when you see the shuttle blasting off, they actually use sugar for the exhaust.
Wow.
There's sugar coming out as it's lifting up. And there's some those shots are beautiful when the Moonrakers are first taking off and you can see them coming up through the atmosphere. Unbelievable. I think if memory serves, Moonraker lost the Oscar. I think it was Moonraker. It was Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I think Alien won, though.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think it was Alien that won the Academy Award in '79. And it deservedly so, I think. But I still think Moonraker's got some great effects in it.
Well, and the greatest effect of them all is making us all believe that Dolly had braces.
How weird is that?
Isn't it?
So you do too. Okay.
No, dude. When I started reading that, I'm like, wait a minute, didn't she?
Yeah, because that seems like, of course, that was the joke, and it's like, oh wait.
Well, here's to us. I mean, I was shocked by that. I'm like, of course she has braces.
Okay, so here, let's just play with this for 1 second. So you're Dolly, and you find Jaws in rubble, sponsored by the good people at 7-Up, and somehow she convinces him or Drax, either one, to get her aboard the space station. And when he's going around killing people, she's just sort of like, pudding. Like, what? I don't know. I appreciate the finality of the arc. I'm glad that module, was safely found with 2 life forms aboard. Like, good for them.
Maybe there's drove parachutes on there. Who knows?
Airbags. Would you fucking believe it?
And to think they did that because Lewis Gilbert got fan mail from children wanting him to be a hero. And it's like, really? It's like, don't you like Jaws as a villain?
Well, I don't want to, like, if children can make Jaws from a villain into a hero, I think there is still hope for more Bond. I think there is still hope in the world. We will have, James Bond will return, and he's going to make it all better, Rob. He's going to make it all better.
Look, I think Bond will return.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do think whether it's Henry Cavill or Richard Madden or whoever it's going to be. I like Richard Madden as Bond. I love Bodyguard. I thought that was a great series. I mean, again, it depends how he's directed. I think he could be that way. I've heard Richard Madden might be a pansexual. I don't know how that would play, but it might play for the masses. Who knows? Would work. I love that guy. And who knows? But I mean, Henry Cavill's sort of the obvious choice, I would think, to be Bond.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at
him, I'm sorry, Rob. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, like look at how he was in Man from U.N.C.L.E. He was great.
You're great in that movie. Also, Tom Holland's been running around talking about wanting to be Bond.
Yeah, he could talk.
I'm like, dude,
you know what? Come on, he already is Nathan Drake.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, look.
Dwayne Johnson said that too. They could talk about it, but no.
All right. Bond Jr., Bond, the early years.
Oh no, not James Bond Jr. Anything but James Bond Jr. Well, I don't mean to. Okay, no. Well, we have the 4 of us here. We've all revisited it quite thoroughly. Kat, I think we may skip the recap if that's okay with you.
Oh, you don't want to do the recap? Save it for the next one?
I just, me and my time limits on weekdays. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2 to this later in the week. Then.
We will follow up with a Moonraker recap. It's the only double episode that we've had since No Time to Die. I'm glad Roger Moore gets one, and I demand that License to Kill get one. But that's for later fights. Can I get everybody's out of 10 martinis for Moonraker? Rob, you want to go first?
I'll give it a 7.5.
Okay. We don't allow for half martinis. You can't leave half a martini on the table.
Oh.
Yes, we can.
A 7.
You can.
Okay. Kat?
6.
You got a 6? Okay. Steven?
7. Solid 7.
And I am giving it a 7 as well because, as I said, I gave The Spy Who Loved Me a 6, and I think that this has superseded The Spy Who Loved Me. It has risen in the ranks. It's a lot to do with Corinne, and it has a lot to do with Hugo Drax. That is the main thing. I do want to, just to indulge me for one moment, this is what he says to his army of very diverse people who are going to repopulate the earth. He says, "First there was a dream, now there is reality. Here in the untainted cradle of the heavens will be created a new super race, a race of perfect physical specimens. You have been selected as its progenitors, like gods. Your offspring will return to Earth and shape it in their image. You have all served in public capacities in my terrestrial empire. Your seed, like yourselves, will pay deference to the ultimate dynasty, which I alone have created.
Dynasty. He says dynasty.
Dynasty.
My mistake. From their first day on Earth, they will be able to look up and know that there is law and order in the heavens. Then the lights go back up and everyone gets back to work.
Wasn't that funny how I turned the lights down for that speech? Or how, like, even back on Earth inside the Amazon base, when he's telling Bond about his plan, and for some reason all the computer screens are on these slanted roofs, and he's looking up, like, Drax is looking up like this. He's like, looking from his screen. I'm like, who built this? But it looks so cool.
It does look cool.
It's made for recliners.
So Cinema Gulp in the chat says, I want Bruce Campbell as Bond. It's an entirely different kind of Bond movie.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if the world would have been different with Clive Owen as Bond, but
Yeah, I
that's a
wonder.
whole new thing.
Bond a long time ago. Henry Cavill was actually the finalist against Daniel Craig.
Right.
Really?
Yep.
And what happened was they thought that they're like, you feel more like a Superman do it. They actually told him that you feel like you're built more like Superman than you are like Bond, like physically. Which, what do you know? How did that change? It turned out, but it's like, yeah, I kind of agree, but I still think he'd make a great one if they wanted to. But I don't know. I've heard he might be tied up doing a bunch of seasons of The Witcher now, which could be cool.
Yeah.
That should kicks ass.
Come on, he can do both.
Right.
Why not?
Yes, true.
I don't see one. All right. Well, then I suppose we should go check out the chat and see all the lovely people who are kicking around. Oh, heavens. It's been a long one.
Okay, I'll bring it up in a second here.
What's up?
So I was going to say, I wanted to, Rob, did you hear the story earlier this week from New York Post that a bunch of unions are pressuring the FTC to reject the Amazon deal to buy MGM?
No.
Yeah, it's like the Teamsters and Internet Employee Services Union are pressuring it because they're saying it would create unfair competition in the streaming market that would allow Amazon to start, like, abusing their customers and raising prices because they'd have more leverage.
I don't know about that.
Right.
That's what I thought too, because I'm like, these numbers were known 6 months ago when they first announced it, but for some reason they're only complaining about it now. I don't know if there's any chance that they could succeed. But
The real question is, I mean, Amazon obviously has deep pockets, but you still have to make good programming. I mean, I do like the fact that Wheel of Time is doing well for them. I was talking about that today on the morning show. They might do a Mass Effect series. I mean, they have the kind of money that they can put the money into these fantasy and science fiction visions. I mean, that's all we want is good content. And good content is still hard to come by. It's not easy to make it's not easy to make good content as much as people might think it is. It's not.
Amazon, I think, has been doing a really good job at making content on their own.
Yeah.
Or buying the right content. So I think them purchasing MGM would be awesome.
Well, yeah. And I bring it up on this show, obviously, because when they first broke the news, everybody was talking about Bond. And they even got a direct quote from Jeff Bezos about it. Like, what do you think? Are you going to own Bond? And how excited they were. And a lot of fans were happy because all of the lengthy delays in the Bond franchise has been due to MGM's financial problems. So it's like,
right.
Yeah, why not let somebody else hold it,
Right.
I was kind of nervous when I saw that report this week that I don't know if that has any effect on the FTC's decision making, but
Right. Yeah. Yep. I mean, I don't know. I think look, at the end of the day, all anybody wants is great entertainment. And if somebody has the money to make great entertainment, well, there you go. And we'll see how that plays out. So that's all
I am looking forward to many more James Bond adventures, and I am very much hoping, like, one of the realities that I always sort of accepted was that it didn't matter what happened. I was never going to see the last James Bond movie. Like, I was going to shuffle off this mortal coil before they stopped making James Bond movies. So I'm happy to pass it on to the next generation, and I'm sure that it'll be amazing. It'll have some amazing title sequences with silhouettes and ladies and cars and hopefully, please.
And cool type of toys you could buy, such as that replica right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Look at that. You got a No Time to Die frame poster.
Yeah, and then I got the other second mess over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I need to find places to put those properly.
I got to build my I've got to build my DB5. You know, my 6th scale or my 8th scale DB5.
Wow.
I finally have all the parts.
Oh, you got to do that.
Oh, wow.
So I got to do that. Yeah, it's great. You know, it's really, really great. So I'll build that, and yeah, I've got a bunch of part work stuff I've got to put together. Which rather than have all these boxes around here, I should build all this stuff.
Yeah, free the toys, watch the movies, read the books.
I know that's the thing. Watch this. I'm getting there. You know, I just bought a bunch of more modeling supplies, so I think I'll.
Yeah, I know. I'm one to talk. I gotta do that too.
I know. I've got to. Yeah. Slowly but surely digging my way through this place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, I want to see another Bond film. I hope it doesn't take 5 years. I mean, we grew up in a time where we had a Bond movie every 2 years. From the time I saw Spy Who Loved Me, I mean, the biggest break. So from 77 to 89, I got a Bond movie every 2 years. And then there was the 6-year break until GoldenEye. But then pretty much then it was up until the Craig era. You got the Brosnan era gave us Bond films every 2 years. GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day. That was pretty much every 2 years.
Yeah, I think that assuming the FTC approves the deal and depending on whenever that happens, I think they'll, be going back to maybe 3 years, if not 2. I don't think they're going to be doing the 5 or 6 thing anymore, especially when the same actor is still playing Bond, because that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I mean, Daniel Craig, but it was age appropriate, I guess.
Yeah, I get it for the story they told, but yeah, in the future it'd be great if if they're watching, please get back to doing semi-regular Bond films.
I mean, the question is that I have for you, Catherine, is next year, 2022, is the 60th anniversary. When they put out the inevitable 4K box set, are you going to buy it?
It depends on a couple things. One, what do the transfers look like? Because I don't yet have they put out a 4K set last year of the Daniel Craig ones. I didn't get it.
I didn't either.
Amazon has had the digital 4K transfers of the first 20 films since 2015. And I assume that they're not going to pay the money to do a proper 4K scan of all those movies. It'd be great if they did.
Well, I mean, they might, because they could do Dolby Vision. They might take the 4K masters and remaster them with Dolby Vision or at least an HDR pass.
Okay, because I know they just, with the Craig set, they just upsampled the 4K. They didn't scan the negatives for that. So hopefully they do it. If they do that and they look really great, perhaps. And then admittedly, as nice as this Bond 50 set is, they're in disc sleeves and it's really difficult to get them out without smudging them and stuff. And it's
I know. I do love the booklet and stuff, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Gorgeous. So yeah, and then seeing what the price is like or whatever. I'm sure they will eventually, but I don't know. That maybe if they push for that, maybe they'll wait till Amazon acquires it so they can get them to foot the bill. I don't know.
I think Amazon might find success in long-form storytelling in the Bond franchise. I know a lot of hardcore fans just want to keep movies and don't want to see it, just completely go to television. But I think they'll find success. I think there's a lot of stories to tell in that universe in a long-form way.
100.
Yeah, I mean, it would depend. They would need somebody who really knows what they're doing. Yeah,
right.
But as far as impending Bond physical media goes, I did pre-order the 4K Steelbook of No Time to Die. That's out December 21st.
Well, should we rattle off some of these chats and figure out how to get the hell out of here?
Sure.
All right. Cinema Gulp says, "Oh, you know what? I don't think I can. Do I get to? No. Oh yeah, I get to. Awesome." Cinema Gulp says that cable that Jaws bit was actually made of licorice.
True.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing not red vines. Bumpmaster Juan says. Probably not. Scotty, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So why do I look like I am going to deliver a drug deal in 1970s Miami? I did my best to emulate Roger Moore hanging from the gondola from this. I've always been a fan of putting the collar over the suit jacket, but I always feel like I'm looking like Roger Moore in Moonraker. Actually, it does look a little Tony
And what's
Montana.
wrong with that, though? Come on, you can look that way. I like
Right.
it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I can and I do.
Gold chain.
I don't look good in chain. Maybe. I don't know. Am I showing too much chest?
No.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Let's see. Let's kind of skipping over the hellos and how are yous.
Although, hello and how are you to everyone who's here? Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for being here. There you go, Scotty.
Scotty looks like McLovin went to a Hollywood rap party.
That's exactly right.
These are all my Halloween costume. I'm going to do these for the next little couple years, and I'm just going to wear this. Hey, Darren J. Seeley is here. Yo. I'm going to
Studios.
Scotty's
That
64?
64? Studio 64. Where's that? I think that's 54.
Studio 69.
Studio 69.
So PC of Tom. Had to drop it when I'm 64. Bump Master 1. So when does Michael Jackson do the moonwalk? No, well, and see, I guess the cultural reference that I know of best from Moonraker is the throwaway gag in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back with the only Ben Affleck can stop the Moonraper.
It's true.
Tom Jr. Jackson says Scott also has a ton of power on his table, which he will be snorting later when he asks people to say hello to his little friend.
That would be powder.
That would be powder. Either way.
Just share it.
That's
Yeah.
right. You're right.
No, nobody wants a Bogart. Come on
Don't
now.
Bogart the fucking blow, my friend.
Yeah, that's right. You know what I'm saying?
I do remember when Michael Lonsdale passed away. I was like,
Great
oh
Michael
no.
Lonsdale.
Yes. Producer Albert R. Broccoli says Cinema Gulp complained that Maurice Bender's title sequence cost more than the entire budget of Dr. No.
That's true.
It's no elephant shoes, though. It's no elephant shoes.
Yeah, no elephant stampedes. Maybe we could use one.
Oh, Cinema Gulp is cribbing from IMDb trivia. Well, thank you.
That's a good place to crib from. So
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the movie. Lois Childs as Holly Goodhead. How did you feel about Holly Goodhead as the Pussy Galore name? Like as the euphemism.
It's all right.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. Okay.
A little on
Holly
the nose.
Yeah,
Captain Cockney's
it's on the
boxes.
nose.
Well,
Yeah. I don't know about that, Tom. No, a great name for a Bond girl. I don't know.
I like Vesper. I think that's probably the coolest name for the Bond girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, West
No, I
Berlin.
mean the overtly sexual names. Like, look, is anyone really going to name somebody Pussy Galore?
Right.
You know, I mean, I enjoyed that. It probably was funny when the Playboy clubs were at their heyday. But
Right.
look, I thought Mary Goodnight was a good name for a Bond girl. You know,
Yeah.
I liked.
but Goodnight is almost like Christmas Jones in that it's almost like they named her Goodnight for that final joke in the movie. And
Right. Yep.
But I'm fine with it. Like
I always thought the name Christmas Jones was cool too.
Oh yeah. No, for sure.
It's like, yeah, let's channel Lara Croft and Indiana Jones in the same instance. Okay.
yeah. Sorry, I had a reverie about.
All right.
Anyway, Tom Jr. Jackson says, "I stand behind my review that No Time to Die is a love letter to the Bond films, books and film scores. It was almost a celebration of Bond."
You know, that would be cool to see somebody do a commentary just to point out all the callbacks.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Cat. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Perhaps, why not?
Right?
Oh, Cinema Gulp loves it when RMB talks editing. That is when he really clicks for me, for Cinema Gulp.
Editor to editor.
You're a font of filmmaking knowledge, sir.
I love editing. What can I say?
Oh, Tom Jr. Jackson says the great Robert Meyer Burnett on the show, and I bet he is hoping that Kino Lorber will release To Live and Die in L.A.
Hey, but they have no date. I will say this: Kino Lorber released Invasion of the Body Snatchers this week.
Yes, they did.
That's
awesome.
One of my favorite science fiction movies.
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie because it's a movie where the invasion has already happened, but the main characters don't know it.
Right.
I love it.
Such a good
movie. So good. It's such a great movie.
Captain Cockney Numberspock says editing is key. True.
Yes, it is.
It is. Yes, it is.
Tom Jr. Jackson complimenting Rob dropping movie knowledge on Scott and Catherine. Mine's being blown by Rob. Yes, agreed. That's why it's a pleasure having him around to talk to him.
Well, I don't know about blowing your mind, you know.
Well,
just film fans all chatting.
Yeah. Sharing knowledge.
That's right.
You know, come to think of it, they could have marketed this new movie as a 60th anniversary thing because Cubby and Harry signed the deal with MGM on June 27th, 1961.
Wow.
I'll send them the memo to remind them.
You should throw that out there.
Yeah.
Cinema Gulp says,
I
can blow minds too. I swear.
I believe
and you can and you have. We did a great conversation about the Wolfmans. It was great.
The Wolfmans.
All of the Wolfmans.
Yes, I had a conversation with him about the new Ghostbusters that aired this
Oh yeah, that just came out.
Yeah, awesome. Check it out.
Tom says Rob is being a cunning linguist with his movie knowledge.
And a master debater.
More of a master debater than a cunning linguist these days.
Bumpmaster has to jet. Thanks for the video. I will check this film out.
Yeah, good.
Heavens. I can't believe you watched this conversation having not seen Moonraker.
But I think it's cool. That's why we have these shows so people can, be informed and hopefully, if they haven't seen it or revisit. It's awesome.
But yeah, Bumpmaster, just don't ask yourself who's Dolly. You'll find out when you see her. Like a Bond in a China shop. I loved that, and I really loved Chang whenever he screams whenever the attack happens. Just visceral.
Cinema Gulp says, "Love me some cat Bond knowledge. Me too. Savant-like level."
Yes, for sure.
Catherine drops that Bond knowledge like it's hot.
Yes, she does.
You just wait till our January shows after I pick up on all the tidbits I may have missed in that book.
I don't know what Darren was responding to, but like Mission Impossible ? I don't know.
Oh, we were talking about the end of the world.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Captain Cockney Numberspock says Catherine knows her Bond onions. Onions? Opinions? What? I'm not sure. It has layers, I'm sure.
All right, Rob, I'll let you do this one. You can get right up close to the microphone.
In a world.
Right. Perfect.
Awesome.
Where this show has more Bond knowledge than any other show on YouTube.
I think we just found our trailer, guys.
Right?
Cinema Gulp says, you mean Onion Blossom to the captain, I suppose.
Do we owe you scale for that? I don't know. Maybe.
Yes.
Right? Yes, always.
Is that neat gin that Scotty is imbibing? No, unfortunately, it is a weeknight, and I have to live like a monk. It's only fun on weekends in Scotland.
So it's only vodka, not gin.
Exactly. The captain says secret agents are secret. Otherwise, they would be real estate agents. There are many times in the James Bond franchise, like even with oh my stars, how did I forget her name? Jill St. John.
Tiffany Case.
Tiffany Case.
Yeah, Tiffany Case. Yeah.
You just killed James Bond. It's like, okay, I guess everybody knows who this guy is. All right.
I like my Jill St. John in that movie.
Yeah. Oh, as do I, except the end when she tries to fire a machine gun. That's kind of silly.
Yeah.
The captain says Lois is even hotter than Kathleen. Oh, I'm still like, no disrespect to Lois, but upon watching it again, yeah, no, she's a GoBot Kathleen Turner. She is the byway. Anyway.
The byway?
Yes. Cinema Gulp says, I feel that Rob is correct about the Daniel Craig films. It's always nice to have an affirmation.
Come at me, bro.
It is all good.
Captain says, "Oh, newsflash! Madonna didn't invent voguing either." Oh, I heavens! You know what I think this is going to be? I think this may be a response to the roving gangs of criminals stealing things from high-end places. What about Apple stores? Does no one remember when people were flash mobbing Apple stores?
Yeah, but those are during riots.
Right.
These go back to like 2013, though.
No, but Madonna did not invent voguing. She appropriated it, though.
Yeah.
Oh no! Well,
In a
much
big
like-
bad way, actually.
We'll talk about Madonna when we get to Die Another Day.
Okay.
The captain says, but of course, recognizing an IP as being behind the cultural curve of being too mainstream is a bit of a hipster move. Well, we liked Bond before it was cool, yo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about Bond is, you know, people forget how successful the Bond franchise actually was in the 60s. I mean, it was a huge deal. It was, I mean, they were playing the Bond movies 24 hours a day in certain theaters, and you know, it's interesting because I think that you had a world that, like, certainly in America, the rise of the middle class after the end of World War II, the greatest generation came home to nest, to get married, to raise children. And by the time the Bond franchise, at least, I mean, the books obviously popularized by presidents like Kennedy, and people were watching them, but the movies, you know, offered wish fulfillment that the world hadn't had. I mean, most people hadn't traveled in transcontinental airliners, and they didn't go to those places, and they just that's what the Bond franchise offered the world.
Well,
And
yeah,
it was-
it was also one of the first times of heavy merchandising around a movie.
Yeah,
For-
absolutely. And
for Thunderball.
and you had like the Playboy magazine and Hugh Hefner, and they sort of co-opted James Bond as their mascot, you know, and it's kind of interesting. But then that's another thing that was again, the Bond. I would argue that James Bond has never been more important or culturally relevant than he was in the 60s.
Well, and that's probably why whenever they do start talking about a new Bond or going in a new direction with a Bond, they do say make a period piece. And
yeah, but the thing is, you've already had one,
Right.
It's like,
yeah,
the Bond
right.
franchise. It'd be to me to go back and do a period Bond film would be it would be odd to watch because the Bond films are from that era.
Right.
mhm.
So to go back and do it
A cover.
like, why would you do it? Like, do you watch the OSS movies, the French OSS movies that are the Bond parodies?
I've seen one of them. I forget which one.
They're
Oh,
they're
the name
they're
of-
pretty good, and there's a new one. There's a trailer that just dropped for OSS 117 from Africa with Love,
Oh, nice.
and it's pretty fun. The first one was really good. I mean, even the film grain they used, it was such a loving recreation of. I mean, those movies were actually a real French series of films, but clearly they were going back, and it's pretty funny. That first one is particularly good. But yeah, watch that trailer from Africa with Love.
I absolutely
Check it
will.
out. Yeah.
And Jean Dujardin comes back, and he looks great.
Really? Sweet.
He comes back. It's very, very funny.
Tom says, I want to see them pull from some of the newer Bond books for ideas. See, and I am remiss. My literary knowledge of James Bond, I think I've read the first three, I think I read. I have them all on my iPad, but I haven't read them yet. Have you guys read? You've read the new ones.
I read all the John Gardner books as
Okay.
they came out, and I've got a few. I mean, I look up and like the Carte Blanche. I read Carte Blanche. I haven't read a lot of the newer Bond books.
You know,
I mean, I think the real problem that I have, some of them they're good, but I guess I read so much spy fiction. They're all kind of, to me, it's all kind of the same. You know?
Well, and also, wouldn't there be a little bit of a cross contamination where you wouldn't be writing the character from the books, but you'd be writing more of the characters from the movies? Does that happen at all?
I think that's definitely problematic. I mean, it's like, are you going to go back and are you going to write as if Ian Fleming was writing the character? Are you reinventing? I mean, I think that's a problem. You know, it was like watching a movie like, I don't know if you saw Dr. Sleep
Yeah.
the Stephen
Yes.
King adaptation. It was interesting because that was both a sequel to The Shining and a sequel to King's novel.
The novel, yeah.
And it was really interesting to watch. I like Doctor Sleep.
I love that. I loved it, man. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, and the extended version is really, really good. I mean,
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And I kind of went into it expecting a lesser, but it was not. I felt it stood on its own as well.
Yeah,
Plus,
like
you put Rebecca Ferguson in anything, and I'll watch it.
Yeah.
one of the comments we get semi-frequently on this show is people wanting a novel-accurate adaptation of Fleming's Moonraker. Because they keep cherry-picking plot points from it and sprinkling it over other Bond films, but...
Yeah, like No Time to Die.
Yeah, but not for like a full-blown adaptation. I thought, yeah, that'd be kind of interesting. But you're right. Would they be writing the film version of the character? Would they dive into... Because I mean, it's obvious to me, having read the books, why they're not really at bookstores, modern bookstores anymore, or reprintings compared to, say, John le Carré's books.
Right. Yeah.
Darren says, villains in film and TV do not care about being PC. They do not care what an audience at home may think. If the big bad wants to rob, kill, and destroy, that is what they do. Yeah, Darren, but also I think that to Rob's point is that the audience also has to feel a certain level of threat from the villain, at least towards the protagonist, for the audience to actually have a sense of, dread that what if they win? And why do I, as an audience member, not want them to win? Why should James, and killing a lot of people, that's it. Yeah, that's a revenge. But it takes me back to The Dark Knight Rises when they blow up all the bridges and Bane owns Gotham City. And I'm like, this is too big for Batman. This is, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how he's going to win. And he did eventually through sacrifice, kind of like No Time to Die. Damn it.
And well, it's interesting because that was a callback to what was the storyline in the comics when they
No Man's Land?
No Man's Land. Yeah, they did that, which is, I mean, my only problem with I like The Dark Knight Rises, but it has so many things in it that are like goofy. That I love, like the first 45 minutes where barely anything happens and you meet all the characters and stuff. I like all that, but then it asks you to believe that if Bane goes in and attacks the commodities market, the stock market, or whatever, that everything he does in there is going to stick. Like they're not going to be like, those trades couldn't have. Those are all bad trades. And then suddenly the power shut off in Wayne Manor.
Yeah, like the next day.
Like the next day. I mean, I can fend off getting my power shut off for months if I need to. And of course, it's just there's all kinds of weird, and like the cops are stuck underground for 100 days or something in that movie. There's way too much goofiness. All of them. And it's like, what, there are no boats?
Right.
And why exactly?
What happened to the boats?
Where are the boats? And we're just gonna. It's very odd. But there's a lot of it I do like.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to be stuck. That's going to be the subtitle: Dark Knight Rises: Where are the boats?
Where are the boats? Like, it's not like you can't swim. No. It's not like it's that far. Like, just wait till summer comes and swim.
That's the thing that movie doesn't tell you. It's like, why exactly do all these people go along with this revolution? Why? Right. I'm not really sure. It's like you were terrified of this guy when he took the city hostage yesterday, and now, let's party, let's destroy everything. Like,
it's a little odd.
I mean, it feels like it's too short of a movie, even at 2 hours 37 minutes, for the sheer amount of stuff that it's trying to do.
Yeah. And then Bond comes back and like what? He sets up the bat logo to catch fire on the bridge to what?
Arts and crafts.
I mean, yeah. It's like the end of Spectre that I can't. I want to do the fan film about the Bond, the Blofeld interns. Okay, I need you to go to Kinko's and you need to copy these 8x10s and then get some red yarn, but you got to get enough red yarn that you can string it all through the building.
That was supposed to be from the demolition team stringing up the explosives.
Yeah, well, I'm sure, but it's just weird. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, the Xerox thing is really weird.
And then at the end, it's like Blofeld's in a helicopter and Bond's using his Walther PPK to shoot this thing. Like, they don't go higher. Just go higher.
Yeah.
And, it's just...
Yeah. Because movie.
Because movie.
Yeah, and how do you go into the snow and not have Bond ski?
It's It's like my friend Ernesto and I, we always say when we come to having arguments like this, I say, you know why they did that, Ernesto? Why? Because the plot demanded it.
Yeah,
Right.
Just
Well, and like with Rubber, no reason.
the movie Rubber.
Yes, the film.
I own that movie. I love that movie. But
Great
see,
movie.
look, the thing about that movie is from the very beginning, it just establishes this conceit, and you're like, okay, you go with it. Why do characters, why do animals in cartoons talk? Because they do.
Yeah.
So there's a living, breathing, psychic rubber tire.
Yeah.
Maybe it's imbued with alien intelligence. Sure, whatever.
But that's what's key is you set up that conceit at the very beginning, so you get audience buy-in.
Right. Immediately,
Right.
You're like, okay,
okay, this is gonna be wacky, right?
Yeah. You buy into, and what's interesting, once you've done that, then there is verisimilitude created within that scenario.
Right.
So it's like, okay, if a rubber tire is actually alive and has psychic powers and can blow up somebody scanner style, you're like, okay, well then there are rules that come along with that.
Right.
The tire has to be ambulatory. Like, how does it move? How does it?
Sure.
And okay, well, this is how it moves. So it can only go so fast. Like the tire still needs to go to get from point A to point B. It doesn't go at the speed of light. It rolls at a certain speed. So then you have to like anything, you have to set up your rules.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And no reason doesn't apply to anything can happen. Once they show the tire actually sort of learning to walk and doing its thing, then it's like, let's go.
And I think when I'm always banging on about verisimilitude, that people don't quite understand that. Like, you can have something that's completely unreal and a total fantasy construct like rubber. But, it's the rules, it's the believability of that scenario. And if you can make somebody believe in anything, but like you said, you have to set up rules. You have to set up parameters that this exists in this world. And I'll buy into that. I'll be like, okay, this is a weird, surreal, meta, whatever, call it whatever you want, concept.
But then you have to stay within those confines. If you break that again, then your movie doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Because then it's out. Then I'm totally out of it.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't get that. They're like, oh, well, look, I love fantasy cinema. But it's like, like Game of Thrones. You establish in the first season, it took Robert Baratheon, a month to go from King's Landing to Winterfell with his entourage. So that gives you an indication of how far away Winterfell is and how big Westeros is. So when you have a group of people that are beyond the wall, they're surrounded by the undead, you can't have some dude run back to the castle, send a raven all the way down to Dragonstone, then somebody reads it, and then they get on their dragons and they fly back and they rescue these guys. I mean, this is like weeks, and they're still sitting in the little middle of the piece of land, and it doesn't work. And when people do that on TV shows or something, you ask yourself, okay, well, I don't believe this. And if you lose that, and that was really one of the interesting things as an exercise, if you watch Game of Thrones as it goes on, when those things become a problem, the storytelling and then adding travel time and all that, it really becomes a problem for the show. And I understand why it does, but when you're watching it as an astute viewer, which I would assume they think their viewers are astute, when you get to these things, it becomes really problematic for the series. And I think that's a lot of my problem with a lot of certainly modern Star Wars, modern Star Trek, modern Doctor Who. There's because there's people, the writers just want to skip over those things. J.J. Abrams has no time at all from getting from point A to point B.
Oh, dude.
I mean,
forget the mycelial drive. Forget the mycelial network. I don't care if it is based in actual factual science. I don't care. You have to spend time traveling from point A to point B. And also, Voyager is on the phone. They would like to talk to you.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's. But
he did the same. He did the same thing in Rise of Skywalker. with Lando getting from the inner core to the outer rim in 15 minutes. And it's an impossibility.
And when you watch stuff like that, what I don't understand is, going back to film editing, when you sit in editorial and there are logic problems, when you're making movies and you're cross-cutting between scenes that weren't necessarily written that way, you have to account for time. Yeah. Even when somebody walks in a room, and depending on where you shoot the scene, you have to figure out, did they walk across the room? Like, you have to account if you cut to a character talking and you didn't cut to the character, you don't see the character. If the character that's close up is another character, you have to assume, okay, during the time they've talked, could this character have made it from that end of the room to this end of the room? And if you don't cut it right, it becomes jarring. You're like, wait a minute, they can't be there. And suddenly you've lost the actual geography of the scene. And that's frequently a problem when you're trying to edit sequences just in rooms with people talking to each other as they're moving around.
Right.
And these are things no one ever really thinks about. But yeah, the J.J. Abrams movies, I mean, they really, really bother me. And when it comes to fantasy cinema, like, one of the great things about Moonraker, for all of its goofiness, I mean, when you go back, they don't just immediately launch and get to the space station. It takes a while. Mm-hmm. You know, the space station is a certain orbit, and you see how long it takes the Moonraker shuttles, even though they've all launched differently, then they form up together, you know, and they're moving to the space station. So that might have taken hours. You know, they've compacted the travel time, but it still gives you the sense that they had to travel.
Well, and there is an escalation in Moonraker as well. Shuttle is stolen. There is the astronaut training ground. We do get to the point that they're launching shuttles. Why are they launching shuttles? They get to the space station, and it takes a guy to press a button, makes it to spin, because everyone knows a spinning space station has gravity now. And it all sort of builds on what has come previously, so that you are suspending your disbelief, or you do have a certain level of verisimilitude. And you just are like, yeah, I'm fine. I can't wait for the army to get like 2 groups laser fighting. They established that at the Q Branch exposition. They have lasers. Like, there's nothing that's as dangling.
No, and that's one of the funny things. I mean, if you're growing up as a kid, you're not even aware that you're learning these things about storytelling, about the mechanics of storytelling, but you are. And I find that a lot of, I call it, you know, video game storytelling. It's all cut scenes. People now are so used to playing games that suddenly, okay, you've ended this level and now we're in a different country. You know, and it's like, how do we go there? Well, like, you know, if you're playing some special ops game, you know, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, you know, once you finish a level, you're traveling to a different country, and in a video game you don't need to see that travel time. But, you know, and depending on if it's a spy thriller, you can cut to an establishing shot with a great piece of John Barry music or something, or like Richard Arnold, you're in Montenegro, you know, and it doesn't matter. They were on a train and now they're in Montenegro, and it's great. And those are tropes that we expect or we understand in movies. And yeah. And I just can't stand when storytellers don't do that properly. And it's funny to say that. Well, who are you to say whether it's proper or not? Well, I do think we are a lot of viewers are losing. I think we in our less literary culture, and in terms of even being astute viewers of movies, I think there's a lot of people that are just allowing those things to pass now. They're just like, yeah, whatever. Because we have a whole generation of people that have grown up playing video games, and video game storytelling. The action happens. You're playing the character, and then you have your cut scene to give you the exposition you need. And you move on. But I think that's not. Are people understanding the nuances of setting up something about a character in the first act and paying it off in the third act?
Right.
And I think, unfortunately, as movies become, in terms of storytelling, less literary based. I mean, if you go back and you watch movies of the 70s, it's almost like you're watching master classes. You're reading classic literature because the storytelling is so much more in depth. The characters, the characterizations are that's why, watching a movie like Tick, Tick, Boom, that I really love Tick, Tick, Boom. It was such a refreshing, like, oh, here's a real movie now, where it's,
Wow.
and I mean, I hate to say that, but I look at my movie collection and all of my favorite movies are more than 20 years old.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and I've been delving farther back to find things that I had missed out on in even like the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, especially the 70s, and just going back and picking up on those. And like, I'll watch something and I'll watch it with like friends who are so sort of desensitized to the storytelling that they just want the spectacle. And they're like, how can you, like, a friend of mine is huge into horror, and we watched Dawn of the Dead, or he watched it for the first time. I was like, you got to see this. You've ever seen it? And he's like, it looks so fake. And I was like, but you don't, like, is it the special effect? What? What? Anyway, needless to say, we're no longer friends, but like, these are going back and having these and seeing these stories where you did have to rely on editing and special effects and using sugar as exhaust plumes. Like, these are things where it's like, not only is it fascinating from a storytelling and an entertainment standpoint, but also having lived through like DVDs with special features and audio commentaries, I feel like I've looked behind the curtain enough that when it's an actual practical effect, I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe they pulled this off. And I'm not even thinking about it until after the credits roll. Like, we just watched, I think it was Wolfen with, Wolfen has so many people in it, and I forget. Who was
Albert Finney in Wolfen?
Yes, Albert Finney. And at the very beginning of the movie, they say Steadicam operator, sole credit. And I'm like, why are they giving the Steadicam operator?
It was brand new.
And it was the POV of the wolf.
Yeah.
Of the wolves. And when you watch it, there's character in the POV shots of it stalking its prey and everything. And I'm like, of course that artist deserved a standalone credit in the opening credits. It's phenomenal. And that kind of a movie entices me far more than, I'm going to make a lot of people angry, I don't really care to see Ghostbusters Afterlife, because I have Ghostbusters. I don't need.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Dawn of the Dead's one of my favorite films of all time. Not just zombie movies, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I understand that if I were to go back and try and show, say, a 25-year-old Dawn of the Dead. Now, this is not to say that a 25-year-old couldn't watch Dawn of the Dead and enjoy it, but I'm saying that you need a very special 25-year-old, because if you now live in a world where we have 10 seasons of Walking Dead,
right,
with those kinds of visual effects, like I was going back and I watched Dr. No on Midnight's Edge, Tom on Midnight's Edge. I'd never seen a Bond film. And I went back, I've been watching Dr. No my whole life. And this is the first time I watched Dr. No, and I thought, you know what? I don't think that you can show Dr. No to a modern audience and have it work at all.
Right.
I think that I think it is a product of its time, and the pacing, the way everything is presented, it feels like a movie that's 100 years old now, if that makes any sense. I mean, it's not, but it feels that way because it has there's no modern sensibility. It really does feel like,
I think it's that way with a lot of the 70s movies like you were talking about. I mean, I'm thinking like, or even early 80s movies. You have Midnight Cowboy and Mean Streets, and these kind of movies. It was a slower pace and a more, I don't know, gritty storytelling in a way.
But it's almost
what
like
it seemed like it was.
If you talk about Mean Streets and Midnight Cowboy, those are also snapshots of the years that they were made.
Right.
Like Midnight Cowboy was 1969.
Yeah.
So it's set in 1969. So it is of its, I mean, it's literally of its time. Like it was. Whereas, I mean, if you go back, what's really interesting is if you go back and you watch, like, I have a hard time watching, what was I watching? It was a like a Victorian era thing. But watching Victorian era stuff that's shot with modern sensibilities and modern storytelling, it takes me out of it.
I didn't even start watching that. What's it called? Bridgerton or something like that on Netflix. It looked odd. It just they looked odd.
You know,
didn't look right.
I was watching too. Like, I love Amadeus.
Yeah, me too.
And Amadeus, you know, I don't imagine that everyone talked to everybody. That, I mean, it's beautifully, the production design is beautiful, looks gorgeous, the actors are all great, but you know, it was written from the perspective of Peter Shaffer when he wrote it, was writing it from with a modern sensibility.
Yeah,
and it has a modern sensibility, and it works because it's not saying it's a riff on Mozart. You know, it's not saying like this is actually the way it was. Right. You know, it's whereas Dr. No was taking place. It was shot in the time it was supposed to be. You know, and this is what 1962 is. It'd be like, and then when you go back and you watch something like you watch Miami Vice, you know, the TV series, and you look at it and it's like it was of its time, and like this is what Miami looked like in 1985, 86, 87 or whatever, you know. And we go back and we look at it now and we think, oh, it's so 80s, but yeah, because it was. You
know, it's funny because you mentioned that, because last month I saw the original Night of the Living Dead for the first time.
Oh, okay.
And it didn't bother me at all that the zombies didn't have all that makeup. I thought it was more disturbing that they looked more human and weren't totally over the top like you see in Walking Dead and all that stuff, because it was like actual people ripping each other to shreds.
Right.
And I thought that was a lot more effective for that reason.
And I think Night of the Living Dead still really works.
It does.
Because it's in black and white, you understand it's not of today. So it's almost like you're being told an old story. You're watching a story, and when it's supposed to be old, you know, I mean, even in 68, it probably seemed older than it was. Mm-hmm. So when you go back and you watch movies that are like that aren't, it's such a weird thing. Like a movie that's like, I go back and watch An American Werewolf in London, right? It's 81. I still watch it now because there's nothing in it. I mean, sure, there's no cell phones and there's no computer technology, but there's never scenes in the movie where you think there should be computer technology, because you got these two Americans backpacking across the moors. So they have their backpacks and their big thick parkas or whatever, and they go to this out of the way, the slaughtered lamb. So even though it's a 40-year-old movie, you never watch that and go, oh, it feels old, because it doesn't feel old.
No, you know? It feels like of its time, kind of like you were saying, when you watch those old Bond movies, you don't question where the villain why all these henchmen are willing to help him destroy the world or whatever. You just roll with it. Right. Whereas when you see that happen in modern movies, it's like, wait a minute, because the tone doesn't match that same whimsy type of tone. It's like, wait, what's going? Wait, why are you doing this? You know, that kind of thing. Whereas like in Moonraker, I don't question why Jaws thinks it's a good idea to join Drax. I mean, yeah, he looks a little surprised when he hears Drax get to the end of his big speech, but he's still like, you know, going to go along with it. But you roll with it because it feels tonally right for the type of time period the movie was made in.
I feel like, and maybe I'm just an old curmudgeonly old man, but sometimes I feel like our generation or our generations that grew up in the 60s, 70s, and even 80s have an easier time with the older movies, 30s, 40s, 50s, and putting ourselves in those movies than the younger generations. And maybe it's because we live in a time period of just a wealth of entertainment. Back then we had entertainment, but it was in various forms, and you had to really go out and find it. You know, it wasn't just in your pocket.
I don't think that we had a prejudice against, like, to me, when I was in the mornings before I went to school, they showed Our Gang shorts, you know, Spanky, Alfalfa, Darla, Buckwheat. They showed those shorts, and when you watch them, you know, you were keenly aware, like, okay, these movies are 1930s America. Yeah. These are kids from the 1930s. I was watching something that was made in the 1930s. So you're like, okay, I mean, this is what they are. You never thought to yourself, like, I'm not going to watch an Our Gang short because it was, well, this is made in the 30s. I'm not going to watch it.
Right.
No, it's just you'd watch it and you'd be like,
watch it.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason you watch it because it was from the 30s and it was so wacky, you know, and then like I used to love watching Leave It to Beaver when I was a kid, you know, and it was so funny. Yeah, it was black and white, and it took place in the 50s, but you knew it took place in the 50s, and
Well,
I never thought to myself, I'm not going to watch this because it's old.
Well,
Right.
yeah,
You know?
because it's like when I grew up in the '90s, and when my first encounter with Bond was I was on vacation in Arizona visiting relatives, and my grandfather took me to the video store, and Goldeneye must have just come out because there's a huge poster for it, and I'm like, oh wow, what's this? And he immediately directed me over to the Connery films, and I was so fascinated at the idea that Bond had his own section of the video store that was so mind blowing to me as like an 8-year-old. And so we rented Dr. No from Russian with Love, Goldfinger, and Goldeneye because I just begged him, let's rent that one.
Wow. Yeah. Cool.
I watched Goldeneye first, loved it, but the fact that the next 3 were tonally radically different did not bother me in the slightest. It almost had like a timelessness type feel. I loved it, and I still do, even though they're very different types of movies.
Well, yeah, but you have to have that. You have to be open to that sensibility. I mean, I've even seen Sophie, Elizabeth's daughter, who's 18. She'll know from the color palette of what the movie looks like how old it is. Mm-hmm. And like, you go back and you look at the 70s movies, the colors are not as vibrant because film stocks have changed. Mm-hmm. The films look differently depending on how they were shot. And it's so interesting to me because when you watch like Lawrence of Arabia, Lawrence of Arabia is like set in a very specific historical time. These are real people that lived at this particular time. Like I can always watch Lawrence of Arabia and it never ever feels dated to me at all because it takes place. That's when it took place. So you look at it nowadays, as soon as they would use CG to say the charge when the horses charge and it would be a CG shot and you'd be like, I'm out.
Right.
Because that nowadays they would use all these tools. They don't make movies the way they make movies the way they used to. And when they used to make movies like Lawrence of Arabia, they went to the fucking desert. Yeah. If they needed 1,000 dudes on horseback, they would go get them. And so,
1,000 horses.
Yeah, and yes, and 1,000 horses. And when you watch this stuff, you knew it was like real.
It was real. It was there.
And that's why when I watch, say, Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, because he insists on practical effects, even the planes, some of the dogfighting stuff, yeah, those are radio-controlled aircraft, and some of them, but they're radio-controlled aircraft, so they actually move the way, and they had to shoot them with cameras in the sense that you go back and you watch Roland Emmerich's Midway. Yeah. It's like I watched Midway and I'm like, come on, man.
I know.
It's the shot.
Well, yeah, it's like even I was reading the making of book on Dunkirk, and he was saying that for the shots where they wanted to have real planes since they couldn't get a hold of P-51s, they're like, oh, well, we could use a modern plane. We'll do this. We'll just deck it out. And he's like, no, I want to use the next closest thing from that era which still flies, and then we'll deck it out to look like that. And they're like, are you sure? He's like, yes. And they did that, and then they mounted IMAX cameras on the wing, and you could see it, and you could tell from the way it flies. It's so real. And that's what I love about it. Like you were saying, the Midway movie that Roland Emmerich did, it's like, okay, this is all CG. You didn't even render it that long. And it's like...
and that's the problem. You're looking at something and you're like, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I can watch it.
Great. I always wanted to see a great Pacific War film with modern like cinematography and modern directing techniques, because I like the 1976 Midway because it does a really good job at orienting you with how that battle actually worked. It's like a game of Battleship. And it's like, yeah, if Emmerich had done some of the shots in Midway for real, some of the shots admittedly look really, or would have looked cool if he didn't do CG it, but it's like, how come we can't? There's so many movies of World War II, like, not fighting Nazis and stuff. Can we have a really good Pacific War movie, please? Yeah. I mean, I like the Pacific series.
Shot in the Dunkirk style. Yeah, hell yeah.
Exactly. Like, I love the Pacific series that Tom Hanks and Gary guys did, but that was more about the island campaigns. I want to see one like out in the Navy, like that kind of. Yeah.
No, and it's funny because I don't know. That's why, like, watching movies that were like going back to Bond, if you went back and did a period piece, like this movie is going to be, it wouldn't really be a period piece. It would be a recreation of the 60s, and it would be the recreation of the 60s from the filmmakers looking back from, I mean, how do you do that when you have a world where Austin Powers exists?
Right.
Yeah, baby. Right. And you like, you could never, even as much as I like the Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie with Henry Cavill and Armie Hammer, it's like this phantasmagoria of the 60s. It's not really the 60s, you know, and Edgar Wright's One Night in Soho. It's cool. Okay, there's a Thunderball movie poster. We know it's 1965 in Soho. But even the way it's shot, and it's cool, but it's not, you know, you want to go back and you want to look at London, look at like Antonioni's blow up.
Yeah.
The fashion scene in London at the time. I mean,
right, Last Night in Soho is kind of like a fever dream for all of those flashbacks or, you know, time travel sequences. Whereas, yeah, like that movie you're mentioning, Blow Up and stuff like that, looks like real. Or take, for instance, La Dolce Vita and the way you see Rome in that city and what it was like. And it feels so, again, it's so real.
Yeah, because they were on the streets of Rome shooting, you know, going to like the Trevi Fountain or whatever. And, you know, they did that. It's like, we're going to go into the fountain, and it's weird. And I'm not saying you shouldn't make movies that are set in the past, but we're, and again, like, I can't, like, growing up watching all these movies, like, I love watching Double Indemnity. It's a great noir movie. It was made in the 40s. I understand, or some of my favorite movies, All About Eve or Sunset Boulevard. You know, those movies are of their time. And it's really hard. Like, you go back, I love Martin Scorsese's The Aviator. You know, the recreation of old Hollywood.
I love that movie too.
Yeah, and it kind of works. Like, Scorsese knows how to there's enough verisimilitude in his movies that I'll buy off on them. You know, I'll be like, okay, Goodfellas, there's a lot of reality there because the way he shoots, he's not it's or Casino or something like that. They're highly stylized. But you still believe that, okay, I'm watching.
There's still there's still that street level grittiness.
That's kind of why I really liked Mean Streets a lot, because it felt very real and very raw, and it was before all those A-list actors in that movie became stars. And it's kind of weird because even though I didn't see Mean Streets until years after I'd seen all those stars in so many other movies, it's almost like something weird happens where I kind of forget that they're big shots because they're playing their characters so differently, because it was like a lot of them for their first big movie. And it just feels so much grittier, and it doesn't feel like a Hollywood scripted type stuff like The Departed. Like, this feels very real.
No, and also the way they shot movies then, you know, the lower budget films, they set up cameras on sticks and shot.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't have steady cams. And so those movies, the good ones at least, really feel, because they're of the time in which they were made, they're shot in that time. So everything about them feels real and authentic, from the camera work to the lighting. I mean, I love movies that take place in sleazy mid-70s New York.
Hell yeah.
You know, I love, and then you look at a movie like Taxi Driver, which almost feels like Blade Runner, because it opens and you see the taxis and the backlit smoke everywhere. And
Dog Day Afternoon.
You know, but the taxi at the beginning looks like a spinner from Blade Runner coming out of the smoke, even though but then it descends into more of a realistic view. But the style, it's all the stylization. So I don't know, like, to go back and do a Bond period piece, let's go back, and you could never do it. Like, it would, I don't know if I would buy it, man, because you would be getting this idealized version of the 19th. Like, one of the great things about Bond movies is they did go to the Hotel Fortinbras in Miami. That hotel is still there. And even though there's some stuff with Goldfinger playing cards that's on a set, there's a lot of stuff that they're actually there. They went on location and shot. You can see, oh, okay, you know, they're really here. A car pulls up, like in Vegas in Diamonds Are Forever. You know, they're in 70s Vegas, and it looks like 70s Vegas. Right. And now it would be like, you go back and you look at like X-Men First Class when they're in Vegas. It's CG land, you know, it you could never go back and do that.
See, I've watched Mad Men twice, and it took me about 4 times to get into it. Just because I was watching it, and it was something that my modern sensibilities, I couldn't take the slow drama. I used to joke with a friend, it's like, so what are you doing tonight? Oh, I'm watching my stories. So, but it was or at least it felt like it was a period piece that was reverent to the time. It didn't feel like a pastiche of its time. It did feel. And so, and when people have been trying to get into it, I'd say, have you seen Mad Men? And they'd say no. And I'd say, it's like James Bond without guns. And that's how I sold it. And so when I imagine the 1960s period piece James Bond movie, that's where I'm looking. That's exactly.
But we already have the James Bond 60s movie.
I know.
They're
I
there.
know.
I mean,
I'm just saying.
You have 6 of them.
I know. I know.
And that's like, you could never get, like, you know, the scene where they're getting the code breaker or the safe cracking device in on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yeah.
It's coming in on the crane, and you see outside in London or wherever,
Yeah.
or it's wherever it is, Switzerland. There's a Swiss bank. Like, that skyline and the color, the actual color, the film stocks, the way the world has been presented to us in the 60s, you could never, like, even Mad Men, as authentic as it was, the colors, the way that show looks, it would never have looked that way if it was made in the 1960s.
True.
Because the actual film stocks, I mean, it's probably shot digitally, but they probably Mad Men was probably shot on film, most of it.
Right.
And I love Mad Men. I've watched it. I own the whole series on Blu-ray. I love that series. It's so good. But what's interesting is if you look at something like Mad Men or The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, those shows really do a good job recreating the period, because like everything they do with those feels like it could have been the way. Like when you watch Mad Men, there's not a lot of flashy camera work. There's not a lot of these big establishing shots in New York. They've got like stock footage and things like that. There's no CG shots of landscapes. And if there are, like, even if you go back and you watch like Spielberg's 1941, the Hollywood Boulevard that's portrayed there, it's Greg Jean's model work, you know, and it works for the movie, you know, and the photography with all that sort of gauzed out focus stuff with the Vaseline on the lenses and all that.
Yeah.
You buy it even though it's a Spielberg movie. I mean, I just don't know if people can, unless you're like David fucking Fincher and you can use special effects, like how if you look at Zodiac, some of the visual effects, you would never know they're visual effects, but he used visual effects to recreate like streets in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But because, I mean, he began his career working at ILM. He worked on Return of the Jedi as an effects cameraman. So at 18, so he really understands how to use effects effectively. I feel like now, even that, people don't know your effect shots are being done. Well, we storyboarded this and we're going to farm it out to 10 different effects houses. So it's really hard to create, especially movies that are supposed to be set in a certain period.
Hard to get synchronicity there.
It's tough, man. It's
you know,
hard.
Rob, you brought up Sunset Boulevard, one of my favorite movies. I have a tradition. I watch that movie every New Year's Eve movie on New Year's Eve. And New Year's Eve is coming.
It's coming
up quick.
Well, and what's so
right around
funny
the
to
corner.
me is there's so many people today. You need to, like, we grew up, we were taught, self-taught usually, how to watch these movies. It's really difficult to try and get somebody today, and I don't mean to bag on millennials or Gen Z, but to try and get someone to go back and watch Sunset Boulevard is a really hard thing for a modern audience. And it's not because they're stupid. They just have never been trained how to watch a movie like that.
Right.
They don't.
It's such a good movie too.
It's so good, but you know, if somebody's only been watching, like if you were born in 1980, you know, and you're 41 years old now, and you only really started watching movies in the early 90s, there were so many movies to watch, you probably never went back and learned how to watch a 40s noir.
Right.
Unless you took a college class. Right. And when you show somebody that, like Elizabeth was trying to read a comic book the other day for her art class. She's not a person that read comics. She never read comics, and she found it very difficult. She's like, I don't understand how to follow these pages. And I've heard people say that before. I've tried to give people, like, I remember giving a friend of mine Watchmen to read. He's like, this is incomprehensible to me. I don't know how to read this. I don't know do I go this way? Do I go across? Like, I don't even know. And it's because he never learned.
Right.
You know, and basically when you're giving somebody Watchmen, that's like saying, okay, here's a Proust novel in French.
Yeah.
You know, go read it in French.
Right.
And
read it in the original Klingon.
Yeah, I mean, go do that. And a lot of people, you know, can't do that. And we have a whole generation, we have multi-generations of people that don't know how to go back and watch a movie before a certain time. Like like I've talked about on the show a lot, I love Antonioni movies. I would never give somebody La Notte, La Ventura, or The Eclipse to go watch now. If somebody was 25 years old, there are very few people I would say go watch these movies. I know people wouldn't get anything out of them.
Right.
You know, they would watch them. They'd be bored 10 minutes in. Like, as much as I love Tarkovsky, watching Stalker, it's a chore. And even though that came out in the late 70s, it's a hard sit, man. And unless you train yourself to get down and really, really understand how to watch a movie like that, a lot of people can't. And that's when I was thinking about Dr. No. I'm like, for Tom, he went into it because, yes, I understand the legacy of Bond and all that. But you watch Dr. No, and for an audience that might have come to the Bond franchise with Casino Royale,
Right.
Yeah.
if that's their first Bond film, watching Dr. No is a rough sit.
That's surprising, because I would think that Dr. No and Casino Royale have a lot in common, because it's not over-the-top action-driven necessarily.
But
I mean, Casino Royale has a few scenes like that, but
it's the way it's presented. Casino Royale, that opening sequence is action-packed. It's very modern in its sensibility, the way it's scored. But Dr. No is
the first action scene is Bond flipping one guy.
Yeah.
And he just flips him. That's
the
it.
pacing of it, the way it's shot. I mean, it really feels like you're watching something that belongs in a museum.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I love it.
Well, and I'm torn because I vehemently disagree with you, and yet I have to agree with you, because I look at it and I think no one would be able to get away with inspecting a phone, putting a hair across the closet door. You wouldn't be able to do those traditional, like what I consider to be, that's what a spy does when he goes into a hotel room. Why do I think that? Because of Dr. No specifically. Right. And so it's just not something that maybe not. But also maybe it is the adaptability of the older generations who have gone from, reel to reel film strips to VHS to DVD to Blu-ray to streaming, and now we have everything we could possibly want at our fingertips. Why would I watch a movie that doesn't have cell phones? Yeah,
I think you just encapsulated what I was trying to say earlier about our generation and the way we kind of, we're brought up, nowadays they're so inundated with entertainment in their pocket. We just didn't have it that way. So I think that has something to do with it too.
Well, I do think also that we were subjected to decades of pop culture mixed together. Whether it was our music that we would listen to. I find it interesting because younger generations find music to be far more easy to jump between decades than they do movies.
Yeah.
And one of the things I used to love is I loved watching reaction videos of like teenagers when they listen to 70s, 60s, and 70s music.
Yep.
Because like when you hear like a guitar riff, like Satisfaction by the Stones, that guitar riff, there's something about music that immediately gets you. Like there's something about, where you can't not respond to that. Like there's something primal, something in our lizard brains that, I think rock and roll has a bit of that, the beat, the songs. So I think it's a lot easier for people to go back and listen to decades worth of music than it is to go back and watch movies. I mean, it's like trying to get people like, oh, Rob, your beloved Star Trek, the original series is so cheesy, I can't watch it. Yeah. And I understand that because the colors alone, the set design and all that, why are people wearing these bright colored shirts? If you try and you're watching, even going back and watching Next Gen, you watch Next Gen compared to the ridiculous Star Trek we're getting today. Star Trek is very monochrome now. It's blues and chromes and silvers and grays.
What's with all the colored pajamas?
Yeah, and even that, even if you look at the just the cinematography, the difference in cinematography, and we've been getting it since the J.J. Abrams movies. So you're looking at 2009, and now we're in 2021. So we've got this Star Trek sensibility. You try and get somebody to go back and watch Star Trek in 1966.
Yeah.
To go back 55 years. A lot of people just tune it out. Yeah. And then, of course, they come back at me. They love it because they know that it becomes a personal attack on me. You know, like, oh, well, your Star Trek, it's not that good.
Yeah, but that's an old thing to fall back on, is make fun of the Trekkie. Like, that is something.
But I mean, more. I'm not so much that it's. I'm just talking about the sensibility of
pardon me.
You know, way things are shot.
Yes.
They're looking at something like to me. I like. There's an Italian-French co-production called Wild Wild Planet from 1965. I love this movie. It's goofy as fuck. I mean, it's you just go if you wanna see a funny thing that'll put a smile on your face from the opening shot. Watch the trailer for Wild Wild Planet. Now, I would never tell anybody who is, say, 25 years old to go back and try and watch Wild Wild Planet. They would laugh at it. They'd turn it off within 5 minutes.
Right.
I mean, somebody might who has a kitschy punk sensibility might dig it, but I wouldn't expect anybody to go back and watch Wild Wild Planet. You know, unless you're studying the history of crazy science fiction horror movies.
Well, you had me at crazy science fiction horror movies, sir.
Yeah, well, but that's because we're the people though that are different.
But I dated a girl, and I showed her 2001 for the first time, and with the great opening score with also Sprach Zarathustra. Pardon my swollen tongue. And she laughed. Because I was like, what is funny about this right now? It's like, it's been in so many parodies. It's been referenced so many times that the weight of the opening shot. And I don't know, I've always been able to separate myself and invest in when I'm watching it, unless it's absolutely jarring. Like, unless it's something that is so completely out of the place that, you know what, I appreciate that you are taking place in the 1990s, but I don't need to hear Just a Girl by No Doubt.
Right.
But I have to tell you, I mean, it's incredibly frustrating that so much of this is like so many people know movies from parodies in The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
And while that's fine, it really has destroyed for a generation of people the ability to go back and watch Soylent Green or watch Planet of the Apes or watch 2001. And in a way, that's kind of sad.
It is.
Because they'll never be able to look. They won't find the value into you. You have to be a special kind of person to leap beyond the parody. Like nothing drives me crazier than, oh yeah, I saw that on The Simpsons, and hearing somebody, because I'm like, you're not actually watching the movie.
Right.
You're not truly paying attention to the film. You're now your brain is, you're so happy that you've made a connection to something you haven't watched rather than watch the movie. You're more interested in making your connection with the
that was on Family Guy.
Yeah. Oh no.
I hate that because, you know, that's also training. You've been trained to not watch certain things. You are not paying attention. Once again, you need to give yourself over to whatever it is that you're watching. But nowadays, viewers are watching things expecting themselves to be stimulated somehow. Like, so they're looking for things they know and understand. Now, how can I make this about me? When really, to learn how to watch a movie effectively, you have to be able to watch it for its own sake, instead of waiting for what it is about this that you respond to. Well, and I think that's a storytelling issue, because as people don't have the literary background anymore, you know, when they talk about having an attention span, like there's nobody has attention spans anymore. No, because now we're only used to getting, thank you, phones or whatever. We're only used to getting information we're interested in.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. The whole thing about a story is, if you're not willing to give yourself over to that story, you're never going to get anything out of it, because you're not opening your mind up to what the story that's being told. So there are certain things like Back to the Future, for instance. Why does Back to the Future work? Because the opening of that movie, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are, panning across the clocks and the idea of time, and then the electric dog feeder. We all get that. There's nothing in there that's necessarily telling you when the movie was made or whatever. And then Marty McFly comes in. All right, maybe his clothes are a little period, but that's fine. He could be a retro funky dude. You know, he plugs in his electric guitar that looks the same as an electric guitar today, and it's a giant oversized speaker. He gets up there, he plays a chord, and he gets blown through the back of the room in Doc's house. That is something that everybody, even now, can watch that opening scene and you're in. It's locked you in because that scene is not, it's 36 years old, but it hasn't betrayed itself. So an audience of today can watch it and go, okay, I'm in. You know, and so many movies that don't do that, that immediately put you in a time that's off-putting or something like, oh, this is alien. This doesn't look, I might as well be on an alien planet. Viewers aren't trained. Sunset Boulevard, black and white movies.
Yep.
I don't know how to watch a black and white movie. What does this mean? I can't watch it. And there are people that they are psychologically not able to watch a black and white film because they know that there's nothing in. Why would I be interested in a black and white movie?
Right. That's old timey stuff.
It's it has nothing to, and you know, it's funny. You can always like show somebody Francis Coppola's Rumblefish, because even though Rumblefish is black and white, it's got a very interesting modern sensibility. But you know, it's I've often wanted to. People said, Rob, you should teach or something, and because I've lectured in schools and stuff, but I would love to teach a story, a class about how to consume stories. You know, how do you actually and show people how they, at first you'd have to show them how you can your brain has only allowed you, the way you've grown up has only allowed you to learn how to consume some kind of stories,
right,
in certain ways. And then you prove it by showing them things that, like, okay, what's happening here? Or great, the class I really want to teach is the difference between The Force Awakens and A New Hope.
All right.
And show you
there's
why
a difference.
One works. Yeah. One works. Yeah, the big difference is one works and one doesn't.
What, you're right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I've been saying for a while that a lot of movies, especially the franchise movies that have been coming out, it's just jangly keys. It's just holding up keys in front of a baby being like, you remember this? You remember this?
Watching Maltese Falcon and Casablanca opened up a world of movies to me when I was younger.
Yeah.
If you can't watch Casablanca, then I don't think that you have a soul. Like, it is one of the best movies of all time because it's got romance, it's got action. Yes, there is action. Dude gets gunned down. Several dudes get gunned down.
And it's got great characters.
It's got incredible comedy, the soundtrack. But yeah, and I would love, you know what? You've challenged me. I'm going to find a 25-year-old and I'm going to say, here, watch Quest for Fire and watch their heads melt.
Well, I mean, the difference between Quest for Fire, though, is because it takes place in a pre-language, you know, I think people can watch that.
I think it would be too slow for the modern sensibility.
That could be true.
Yep.
But I think you'd have an easier time getting them to watch Quest for Fire than you would watching The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Yeah. Okay.
You know.
True.
Or the original Star Trek, because as Tom Jr. Jackson says, it all comes back to Star Trek with R&B.
Oh, and Rob, can I see you at camera 2 for a second here? So what we did, I watched Charlie X the other night.
Right.
And I was absolutely taken. I don't know the name of the actor who played Charlie, but his performance when the alien comes and takes him back, and he's like, "I don't want to go."
I want to stay.
And it was amazing because it choked me up because you felt it through the performance, and I'm like, this is why I watch the old Star Trek, is because it doesn't necessarily. Yeah, there's a green floating head on the bridge. If that's where your suspension of disbelief is falling apart, okay. It got me back when it's like, no, this horrible, horrible boy, he does have feelings, even though he's a villain. He does not want to be stuck in the non-feeling Melba-Toast universe. Anyway,
I also want to see things that are outside of the box, like close up. You know, it's like a documentary, but then it's not because they got all the same people from the actual incident to just play themselves and do it again. And throughout, you deliberately see things like the boom mic comes into the shot. Sometimes you hear the director calling action and stuff, and it's like, wait, what's going on? And they all do that deliberately because they're trying to cross the line between, is this a reenactment? Is it a documentary? Filming it as it's happening in real time. And it's so interesting and weird. And I would think that most modern audiences would probably think that too is really slow, but it's like, that's so good. It's so, who thinks like that anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. Robert, I think Robert Walker Jr. played Charlie X, I think. I think I'm bad with actor names, to be honest. I'm much more of a director, writer, producer.
Either way, It came to mind because it was on Monday night, and I was watching it, and I was just like, I never really liked Charlie X, and I rewatched it, and I was like, holy crap, I like Charlie X again. And so at the very maybe with all the new stuff that's coming out, or the stuff that has disappointed me, not necessarily to tar and feather all modern entertainment, but just going back and revisiting things that, like Moonraker, that I thought was cheesy, and it's going to get silly and I'm not going to like it. And it's just, it stirs like either nostalgia for me, and it's with the original, like property, like the original movie. I don't necessarily have to see a remake or a revisitation or any of that. It's just going back and then finding that same sort of emotional storytelling or engaging action or whatever the genre may be. It was done just as well, if not better, and maybe they took their time. Not everything has to be a Big Mac. Some things can be a 7-course meal.
Yes.
Yeah, so, if you're engaged enough with the story, you're not, and with the characters, you're not going to care if it's slow, because you're going to love the world that you're in.
Yes.
Well, and if you don't like the characters, it doesn't matter how fast you can hop around the galaxy.
Right.
Oh, I hate to be a Debbie Downer, guys, but I gotta go. You guys can continue without me. Yeah,
Gilbert. Gilbert.
Gilbert and Tallulah. Yeah,
there you go.
Bed.
Well, thank you so much.
Great conversation.
It was. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
this is awesome.
So very much. Can I entice you on an arm wrestle over License to Kill?
Oh man, you know what? I've actually had a hankering to go back and watch that again. I don't know why. I'd like to talk about License to Kill.
Currently, that's on the docket for the December 29th episode, but we could always shuffle things around if necessary.
Oh, I mean, I think it would be, it'd be interesting to go back and watch that again.
Yeah.
Rob, you're welcome. You're welcome to the show anytime.
1989. That movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boy, I really don't like that movie.
Oh,
you know what? Maybe
how wrong you are, Mr. Bond.
Maybe I'll look at it again, and people will I'll feel differently about it.
Oh,
There's
come
things
on!
about it I like. I love Talisa Soto and Carrie Lowell.
Yes,
well,
and Robert Davi is.
When we have people on opposite sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't. The movie just looks. It's not a Bond movie. It's a Miami Vice episode.
Oh. But there is I can't get into it now.
Right.
But I look forward to getting into it.
We have a whole show to do on that.
It's funny because I'm in the middle on that argument. It's like, yeah, I agree with Rob. It's not really a Bond movie, but I also agree with Scott. I kind of like it. It's like,
yeah, I'd have to watch it again. I was so disappointed in it when I saw it. That summer was a bummer. The summer of '89. Yeah, okay, Batman came out, but Star Trek V came out, Ghostbusters 2 came out, Last Crusade came out, and License to Kill came out, and they were all crushing disappointments to me.
Yes.
Lethal Weapon 2.
That was good.
That was good.
I always had a soft spot for Last Crusade because I think I first saw that movie probably when I was 5 years old, even though I agree it is a remake of Raiders.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I was so... Everyone loves that movie, and I'm just like...
Not me.
Yeah,
I don't like it either.
Oh, I love Sean Connery. That movie's great.
Yeah.
But
well,
all right.
Thank you again, Rob. There was a great conversation. Thank you, Steve. Steve hasn't been here in a while. Thank you for gracing us.
This is my pleasure.
It was awesome. Great. Yeah.
And
I mean,
Kat,
I would just sit around and talk on YouTube to people that I have fun conversations with all day.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I mean, why not? I mean, I've often thought that like, okay, I've got Dota Dragon's Blood season 2 and maybe season 3 coming out. But, it's so hard to get projects off the ground. I've often thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I just broadcast on the channel from 9 a.m. to 8 or like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Like do a whole show and make it like a 10-hour show every day.
Wow.
YouTube or Twitch?
No, on YouTube.
Okay.
On YouTube and just do it and then have it broken up into sections, and then there'd be guests, there'd be bringing on viewers, and just do like, I don't know if anyone's ever really tried to do that. We always have these separate shows, and I watch like Nerdrotic sometimes brings on these groups of people, but like vaguely have a schedule and just Like I was thinking about trying it for like a month and just turn on the cam, just start broadcasting at 9 and be like, here we are, and make it like a radio show.
Yeah.
You know, where you break it up. Here's the entertainment news, you know, and here's today's guest on whatever today. Now we're in the movie news or whatever, and bring on a couple of guests.
Kind of like what you're doing with the Midnighter for a while. You start with like the big entertainment news at the start of the block, and then you have people calling in to give their opinions on it.
Yeah, and I wonder if I could do that. Like how could you sustain that? And that would be that. I wonder if you could do that, because the thing is, it's such a waste of time. Like you know, working in the business, trying to get projects off the ground, you spin your wheels and do nothing. You get nothing done, and it's maddening. It's maddening, and sometimes you just want to be like, "Fuck, why am I?" I just want
to talk on the internet.
Yeah,
that's all. Unfortunately.
And don't forget, tomorrow is the big WKRP turkey drop, because as God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
Boom.
Yeah, I mean, I've often thought about. I keep getting these notices about applying for these different executive jobs, and I would probably never get them. But I, in a way, it's like that wouldn't be bad. Like to go work for scripted programming at Amazon. I can only imagine what that. Again, what would that? I would have to explain my career to somebody in HR who's like 30.
Right.
And they're like, wait a minute, you've done what? And I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. You know, how would you do that? Like I guarantee you might have somebody who has more executive experience, but in terms of actually making stuff,
but
you'd be hard pressed.
With Imagination Connoisseurs Unlimited.
Well, yeah, we've got that. I mean, that's all that paperwork is in process, and again, we've got a lot of stuff going there. But again, you still have to find the financing. You still have to. There's so much involved. I just want to make stuff, and
that was a big obstacle in the way after graduating college. We tried to get our films made and stuff. And our friends, we all had scripts and stuff. And like one friend invested in the camera equipment, another had the editing suite, and the other had all the sound. And it's like, okay. And then another guy knew all the people in town for doing this. But then scheduling and money is always what gets in the way, because then you need to figure out how to pay for your daily life in California.
Oh yeah, I mean that's always the thing, is like, what do you do? Like how do you pay for all this stuff? And it, you know, and now at the low budget level, because of things I was talking about today, like piracy, and it's really hard because you can't guarantee, if you're working for a $5 million budget or under, say, there's no way to guarantee your investors that they're going to get their money back.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem. You can provide everything, all the things you can have a business plan, whatever. There's no way to guarantee they're going to get their money back. You know, even like Tango Shalom, it's eking its way into a meager, it didn't cost very much. So it is, I mean, it's amazing to me. We never thought it would ever get a theatrical release. And then it was like the idea of it, would it ever gross $100,000? I mean, for Tango Shalom opening at 2 or 3 theaters, and I mean, there's no marketing budget behind it, and we did. It got to 100,000. I couldn't believe it, and that's awesome. A substantial chunk of that movie's budget. So it's like, all right, you know. And then it goes on to VOD, and it's opening in Russia in 3 weeks.
Yeah, were you, besides all the other things you did on the movie, you were also the marketer, right?
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's why. Look, I'm playing every day. I mean, I'll probably retire it shortly, but the VOD ad with Lainey Kazan and Renee Taylor, I'm like, how many more times am I going to play that? Well, you know, we're trying to get our VOD numbers up. You need to get like 100 reviews. The magic, this is such a weird thing, but the magic number is to get 100 reviews, 5-star reviews on wherever it's streaming, like on VOD. So we could get a streamer to pick it up. That's like the magic number for distributors. And I think we're only like at 55 or something, at least on Amazon. And we only have a couple more days to do it. So it's such a weird thing to do.
That is weird.
And I mean, the funny thing is Tango Shalom, it is what it is. I mean, let's face it. It's not something I was involved with from the very beginning. And I'm proud of the work we did, but it's a fakakta little movie, you know. We got it done. But it's not Endgame.
No. So they can't all be Endgame.
No,
we have to have some Tango Shalom too.
Yes, and I'm
nice
really
to have
proud
a nice
of.
It's nice to have nice grounded non-franchise movies about real people with relatable problems, or if it's like the new culture thing, like the problem that the main character Tango Shalom is dealing with, the conflict there. That's really interesting because as somebody who's not really familiar with that, it's like, wow, I guess I never really thought that he would actually be bothered by that, and it's really interesting to watch that and see, how's it's an engage. I find that to be kind of engaging. Yeah. Like with their characters more than
I love those like independent film feeling movies like the Florida Project and others. There's just cool like that. They don't have to all be tentpole summer blockbusters.
No, and I'm getting tired of that. It's just it's wacky. It's wacky. Getting all this stuff, but it's nice to have a project out into the world.
I'll bet something like that. It's been a while, right?
Yeah, so it's good.
Awesome.
Well, sure. I guess I will take my leave of you lovely folks.
Tend to your canines, sir. I on behalf, Steve, are you going to do on behalf? Or?
No, you can do it. I just want to say thanks to Rob and you're always welcome. Jump in anytime.
Well, I appreciate that.
Always. Thank you.
Thank you so much. James Bond will return, and Martinis, Gadgets, and Guns will be back next time with For Your Eyes Only. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
That's the button.